CISSP. Certified Information Systems Security Professional. Domain 1 and 2 Security and Risk Management and Asset Security. Security is the state of being free from danger or threat. For example, security forces, security guard, cyber security systems, security cameras. Security forces. Security guard. Cyber security systems. Security cameras. Information security is the practice of preventing unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, inspection, recording, or destruction of information. Information or data may take any form, electronic or physical. Information security's primary focus is the balanced protection of the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data without no negative effects on organization productivity. Certified Information Systems Security Professional Preparation Lecture 1, CIA Triad. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, also known as the CIA Triad, is a model designed to guide policies for information security within an organization. The elements of the triad are considered the three most crucial components of security. Confidentiality. When we talk about confidentiality of information, we are talking about protecting the information from disclosure to unauthorized parties. Information has value, especially in today's world. Bank account statements, personal information, credit card numbers, trade secrets, government documents. Everyone has information they wish to keep a secret. Protecting such information is a very major part of information security. A very key component of protecting information confidentiality would be encryption. Encryption ensures that only the right people who knows the key, can read the information. Encryption is very widespread in today's environment and can be found in almost every major protocol in use. A very prominent example will be SSL/TLS, a security protocol for communications over the Internet that has been used in conjunction with a large number of Internet protocols to ensure security. Other ways to ensure information confidentiality include enforcing file permissions and access control lists to restrict access to sensitive information. Integrity. Integrity of information refers to protecting information from being modified by unauthorized parties. Information only has value if it is correct. Information that has been tampered with could prove costly. For example, if you were sending an online money transfer for $100, but the information was tampered in such a way that you actually sent $10,000, it could prove to be very costly for you. Cryptography plays a very major role in ensuring data integrity. Hashing the data you receive and comparing it with the hash of the original message. However, this means that the hash of the original data must be provided to you in a secure fashion. Availability. Availability of information refers to ensuring that authorized parties are able to access the information when needed. Information only has value if the right people can access it at the right times. Denying access to information has become a very common attack nowadays. Almost every week you can find news about high-profile websites being taken down by DDoS attacks. The primary aim of DDoS attacks is to deny users of the website access to the resources of the website. Such downtime can be very costly. Other factors that could lead to lack of availability to important information may include accidents such as power outages or natural disasters such as floods. Regularly doing off-site backups can limit the damage caused by damage to hard drives or natural disasters. For information services that is highly critical, redundancy might be appropriate. Having an off-site location ready to restore services in case anything happens to your primary data centers will heavily reduce the downtime in case of anything happens. A balanced security approach should be implemented to ensure that all three facets are considered when security controls are implemented. When implementing any control, you should identify the facet that the control addresses. Some assets have a critical confidentiality requirement, company trade secrets, some have critical integrity requirements, financial transaction values, and some have critical availability requirements, e-commerce web servers. CISSP. Certified Information System Security Professional Preparation. Lecture 2. Security Terms. Identity. Authentication. Authorization. Accountability. Auditing. Non-repudiation. Defense in depth. Abstraction. Data hiding. Encryption. What is identity? Identity is a claim. If your name is Mr. B, you identify yourself by saying I am Mr. B. What is authentication? Proving an identity claim is called authentication. You authenticate the identity claim, usually by supplying a piece of information or an object that only you possess, such as a password providing or your passport in the physical world. What is authorization? Once a subject is authenticated, access must be authorized. Authorization describes the actions you can perform on a system once you have been identified and authenticated. Actions may include reading, writing, or executing files or programs. If you are an information security manager for a company with a human resources database, you may be authorized to view your own data and perhaps some of your employees' data, such as accrued sick time or vacation time. You would not be authorized to view the CEO's salary. What is accountability? Accountability holds users accountable for their actions. This is typically done by logging and analyzing audit data. Accountability is the process of tracing actions to the source. What is auditing? An information security audit is an audit on the level of information security in an organization. An information security audit is a systematic, measurable technical assessment of how the organization's security policy is employed. It is part of the ongoing process of defining and maintaining effective security policies. Security audits provide a fair and measurable way to examine how secure a site really is. What is non-repudiation? Non-repudiation is the assurance that someone cannot deny something. Typically, non-repudiation refers to the ability to ensure that a party to a contract or a communication cannot deny the authenticity of their signature on a document or the sending of a message that they originated. A valid digital signature gives a recipient reason to believe that the message was created by a known sender, that the sender cannot deny having sent the message, and that the message was not altered in transit. What is defense in depth? Defense in depth strategy refers to the practice of using multiple layers of security between data and the resources on which it resides and possible attackers. The strategy is based on the military principle that it is more difficult for an enemy to defeat a complex and multi-layered defense system than to penetrate a single barrier. What is abstraction? Abstraction in general is the process of taking away or removing characteristics from something in order to reduce it to a set of essential characteristics. As in abstract art, the representation is likely to be one potential abstraction of a number of possibilities. In information security, abstraction is the concept of hiding irrelevant details. In other words, make complex systems simple by hiding the unnecessary detail from the user. What is data hiding? Data hiding is the principle whereby data about a known entity is not accessible to certain processes or users. For example, a database may collect information about its users, including their name, job title, email address, and phone number, that you want all users to be able to access. However, you may not want the public to be able to access their social security numbers, birth date, or other protected personally identifiable information, PII. Encapsulation is a popular technique that provides data hiding. What is encryption? Encryption is the process of encoding a message or information in such a way that only authorized parties can access it and those who are not authorized cannot. Data can be encrypted while data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. CISSP. Certified Information System Security Professional Preparation. Lecture 3. Alignment of security function to business. Strategy, goals, mission, and objectives. Vision, mission, goals, objectives, strategy. Vision, big picture of what you want to achieve. For example, a successful family dairy business. Mission is a general statement of how you will achieve the vision. An example is to provide unique and high-quality dairy products to local consumers. A goal is a general statement of what you want to achieve. A goal should be consistent with the organization's mission statement or philosophy, and it should help define a vision for the organization. Objectives provide specific milestones with a specific timeline for achieving a goal. An objective turns a goal's general statement of what is to be accomplished into a specific, quantifiable, time-sensitive statement of what is going to be achieved and when it will be achieved. Examples of business objectives are: earn at least a 20% after-tax rate of return on our investment during the next fiscal yearly. A strategy is a statement of how you are going to achieve something. An organization's strategy describes how it accomplishes its mission. Information security function must align with the business strategy, goals, mission, and objectives of the organization. Proper alignment with the organization's mission, strategy, goals, and objectives also helps to build business cases, secure budgets, and allocate resources for security program initiatives. Strategically aligned security functions work as a business enabler that adds value to the business. CISSP. Certified Information System Security Professional Preparation. Lecture 4, Organizational Process. Organizational processes, governance committees. A governance committee is responsible for recruiting and maintaining the governance board for an organization. Information security professional should ensure governance committee understands high level the importance of information security. Information security professional should ensure governance committee requirements for information security. Information security professional should maintain a working relationship with governance committee members and be available to respond to specific risk, privacy, and information security questions. Organizational processes, acquisitions and mergers. An acquisition is a process through which one organization buying another organization. For example, Bharti Airtel acquired Zion Africa, February 2010. A merger is a process when two organizations decide to join together to become one organization. Example, in the 1999 merger of Glaxo Wellcome and SmithKline Beecham, both firms ceased to exist when they merged, and a new company, GlaxoSmithKline, was created. Acquisition and merger can be friendly or hostile. For example, the disclosure of two massive data breaches that recently affected a large web services provider had an immense effect on the deal price. Following the breach, the acquiring company paid hundreds of millions of US dollars less than originally planned. To avoid such a situation, information security professionals should bring several considerations to ensure that organizational security does not suffer as a result of an acquisition or a merger. Information security professional must be aware of additional data types that may need more protection. Information security professional must be aware of additional technology types that may need more protection. Information security professional must be aware of new staff and roles with enhanced requirements for security awareness and training. Information security professional must be aware of threats from former employees. Information security professional must be aware of vulnerabilities when systems are merged. Information security professional must be aware of potentially new policies, standards, and procedures to support compliance with any laws, regulations, and requirements. Information security professional must be aware of external business partners and interconnections that will need review and assessment. Organizational processes, divestitures and spin-offs. A divestiture, which is the opposite of an acquisition, occurs when part of an organization is sold off or separated from the original organization. A divestiture impacts personnel because usually a portion of the personnel goes with the divestiture. Information security professional should be concerned with data loss and data leakage due to employees leaving for the divestitures and/or another company. Information security professional should be concerned with system interconnections, protocols, and ports left open after the function they were serving is no longer applicable. Information security professional should be concerned with loss of visibility into the network and system logs if both organizations did not keep the appropriate security monitoring tools. Information security professional should be concerned with new threats from employees who may have been laid off or forced out of the organization. Information security professional should be concerned with the need to revise policies, standards, and procedures to recognize any new governance bodies in the organization and reflect the organization change. Information security professional should be concerned with the need to meet any divestiture imposed deadlines for data segregation or spin-off between organizations. CISSP. Certified Information Systems Security Professional Preparation. Lecture for Organizational Process. Organizational processes, governance committees. A governance committee is responsible for recruiting and maintaining the governance board for an organization. Information security professional should ensure governance committee understands high level the importance of information security. Information security professional should ensure governance committee requirements for information security. Information security professional should maintain a working relationship with governance committee members and be available to respond to specific risk, privacy, and information security questions. Organizational processes, acquisitions and mergers. An acquisition is a process through which one organization buying another organization. For example, Bharti Airtel acquired Zion Africa, February 2010. A merger is a process when two organizations decide to join together to become one organization. Example, in the 1999 merger of Glaxo Wellcome and SmithKline Beecham, both firms ceased to exist when they merged, and a new company, GlaxoSmithKline, was created. Acquisition and merger can be friendly or hostile. For example, the disclosure of two massive data breaches that recently affected a large web services provider had an immense effect on the deal price. Following the breach, the acquiring company paid hundreds of millions of US dollars less than originally planned. To avoid such a situation, information security professionals should bring several considerations to ensure that organizational security does not suffer as a result of an acquisition or a merger. Information security professional must be aware of additional data types that may need more protection. Information security professional must be aware of additional technology types that may need more protection. Information security professional must be aware of new staff and roles with enhanced requirements for security awareness and training. Information security professional must be aware of threats from former employees. Information security professional must be aware of vulnerabilities when systems are merged. Information security professional must be aware of potentially new policies, standards, and procedures to support compliance with any laws, regulations, and requirements. Information security professional must be aware of external business partners and interconnections that will need review and assessment. Organizational processes, divestitures and spin-offs. A divestiture, which is the opposite of an acquisition, occurs when part of an organization is sold off or separated from the original organization. A divestiture impacts personnel because usually a portion of the personnel goes with the divestiture. Information security professional should be concerned with data loss and data leakage due to employees leaving for the divestitures and/or another company. Information security professional should be concerned with system interconnections, protocols, and ports left open after the function they were serving is no longer applicable. Information security professional should be concerned with loss of visibility into the network and system logs if both organizations did not keep the appropriate security monitoring tools. Information security professional should be concerned with new threats from employees who may have been laid off or forced out of the organization. Information security professional should be concerned with the need to revise policies, standards, and procedures to recognize any new governance bodies in the organization and reflect the organization change. Information security professional should be concerned with the need to meet any divestiture imposed deadlines for data segregation or spin-off between organizations. CISSP. Certified Information Systems Security Professional Exam Preparation. Lecture 5, Organizational Roles and Responsibilities. A security role is the part where an individual plays in a complete organization security implementation and administration. Information security is the responsibility of everyone within the company. Senior management has the ultimate responsibility for information security. An organization's board of directors includes individuals who are nominated by a governance committee and elected by shareholders to ensure that the organization is run properly. The Chief Executive Officer, CEO, is the highest managing officer in any organization and reports directly to the shareholders. The Chief Financial Officer, CFO, is the officer responsible for all financial aspects of an organization. The Chief Information Officer, CIO, is the officer responsible for all information systems and technology used in the organization and reports directly to the CEO or CFO. The Chief Privacy Officer, CPO, is the officer responsible for private information and usually reports directly to the CIO. The Chief Security Officer, CSO, is the officer who leads any security effort and reports directly to the CEO. This role must solely be focused on security matters. Security is always the focus of the CSO. Business unit managers provide departmental information to ensure that appropriate controls are in place for departmental data. An audit committee evaluates an organization's financial reporting mechanism to ensure that financial data is accurate. The main responsibility of the data or information owner is to determine the classification level of the information owns and to protect the data. This role approves or denies access rights to the data. The data custodian implements the information classification and controls after they are determined by the data owner. A system owner owns one or more systems and must ensure that the appropriate controls are in place on those systems. A system administrator performs the day-to-day administration of one or more systems. A security administrator maintains security devices and software, including firewalls, antivirus software, and so on. A security analyst analyzes the security needs of the organization and develops the internal information security governance documents, including policies, standards, and guidelines. An application owner determines who can access an application. A supervisor manages a group of users and any assets owned by this group. A user is any person who accesses data to perform their job duties. An auditor monitors user activities to ensure that the appropriate controls are in place. Auditors need access to all audit and event logs to verify compliance with security policies. CISSP. Certified Information Systems Security Professional Exam Preparation. Lecture 6, Security Control Frameworks. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. NIST 800 series is a set of documents that describe U.S. federal government computer security policies, procedures, and guidelines. While NIST publications are written to provide guidance to U.S. government agencies, other organizations can and often do use them. It is widely used in private industry, both in the U.S. and throughout the world. Each NIST special publication series defines a specific area. NIST Special Publication 800-12 Revision 1. Introduces information security principles. NIST Special Publication 800-16 Revision 1, third draft describes information technology/cybersecurity role-based training for federal departments, agencies, and organizations. NIST Special Publication 800-18 Revision 1, provides guidelines for developing security plans for federal information systems. NIST Special Publication 830 Revision 1, provides guidance for conducting risk assessments of federal information systems and organizations. NIST Special Publication 800-34 Revelation 1, provides guidelines on the purpose, process, and format of information system contingency planning development. NIST Special Publication 800-35 provides assistance with selecting, implementing, and managing IT security services through the IT security services life cycle. NIST Special Publication 800-37 Revision 1, provides guidelines for applying the risk management framework to federal information systems. NIST Special Publication 800-39 provides guidance for an integrated, organization-wide program for managing information security risk. NIST Special Publication 800-50 building an information technology security awareness and training program. NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, Special Publication 800-53, provides a set of security and privacy controls for federal information systems and organizations. NIST Special Publication 800-55 Revision 1, Performance Measurement Guide for Information Security. NIST Special Publication 800-60 Volume I Revision 1, Guide for Mapping Types of Information and Information Systems to Security Categories. NIST Special Publication 800-61 Revision, provides guidelines for incident handling. NIST Special Publication 800-82 Revision 2, Guide to Industrial Control Systems, ICS, Security Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, SCADA, Systems, Distributed Control Systems, DCS, and other control system configurations such as Programmable Logic Controllers, PLC. NIST Special Publication 800-84. Guide to Test, Training, and Exercise Programs for IT Plans and Capabilities. NIST Special Publication 800-86. Guide to Integrating Forensic Techniques into Incident Response. NIST Special Publication 800-88 Revision 1, provides guidelines for media sanitization. NIST Special Publication 800-92. Provides guidelines for computer security log management. NIST Special Publication 800-101 Revision 1, Guidelines on Mobile Device Forensics. NIST Special Publication 800-115. Provides guidelines for information security testing and assessment. NIST Special Publication 800-122, Guide to Protecting the Confidentiality of Personally Identifiable Information, PII. NIST Special Publication 800-123. Provides guidelines for general server security. NIST Special Publication 800-124 Revision 1, Guidelines for Managing the Security of Mobile Devices in the Enterprise. NIST Special Publication 800-137. Provides guidelines for an Information Security Continuous Monitoring, ISCM, program. NIST Special Publication 800-144. Provides guidelines on security and privacy in public cloud computing. NIST Special Publication 800-145. Provides the NIST definition of cloud computing. NIST Special Publication 800-146. Cloud Computing Synopsis and Recommendations. NIST Special Publication 800-150. Guide to Cyber Threat Information Sharing. NIST Special Publication 800-153. Provides guidelines for securing wireless local area networks. WLANs. Draft NIST Special Publication 800 to 154 provides guidelines on data-centric system threat modeling. NIST Special Publication 800 to 160 provides guidelines on system security engineering. NIST Special Publication 800-161, Supply Chain Risk Management Practices for Federal Information Systems and Organizations. NIST Special Publication 800 to 162, Guide to Attribute-Based Access Control, ABAC, Definition and Considerations. NIST Special Publication 800 to 163, provides guidelines on vetting the security of mobile applications. NIST Special Publication 800 to 164, Draft. Guidelines on Hardware-Rooted Security in Mobile Devices, Draft. NIST Special Publication 800 to 167, Guide to Application Whitelisting. NIST Special Publication 800-175A, Guideline for Using Cryptographic Standards in the Federal Government, Directives, Mandates, and Policies. NIST Special Publication 800 to 181. Describes the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, NICE. Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. NIST Special Publication 800 to 183. Describes the Internet of Things, IoT. ISO/IEC 27000 Series. The ISO/IEC 27000 series is developed and published by the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, to provide a globally recognized framework for best practice information security management. The ISO/IEC 27000 series provides best practice recommendations on information security management, the management of information risks through information security controls, within the context of an overall information security management system. ISO/IEC 27000 Overview and Vocabulary. ISO/IEC 27001 ISMS Requirements. ISO/IEC 27002 Code of Practice for Information Security Controls. ISO/IEC 27003 ISMS Implementation. ISO/IEC 27004 ISMS Measurement. ISO/IEC 27005 Risk Management. ISO/IEC 27006 Certification Body Requirements. ISO/IEC 27007 ISMS Auditing. ISO/IEC 27008 Guidance for Auditors. ISO/IEC 27011 Telecommunications Organizations. ISO/IEC 27014 Information Security Governance. ISO/IEC 27015 Financial Sector. ISO/IEC 27031 Business Continuity. ISO/IEC 27032 Cybersecurity. ISO/IEC 27033 Network Security. ISO/IEC 27034 Application Security. ISO/IEC 27035 Incident Managements. ISO/IEC 27037 Digital Evidence Collection and Preservation. ISO/IEC 27799 Health Organizations. ISO/IEC 27000:2018 provides the overview of Information Security Management Systems, ISMS. It also provides terms and definitions commonly used in the ISMS family of standards. ISO/IEC 27001:2013 is the international standard for implementing an information security management system requirements. ISO/IEC 27002:2013, ISO 27002 ISO 27002, Code of Practice for Info SEC Controls, the international standard which supports the implementation of an information security management system based on the requirements of ISO 27001. ISO/IEC 27003:2017 provides explanation and guidance on ISO/IEC 27001:2013. ISO/IEC 27004-2016 monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. ISO/IEC 27005:2018, Information Technology Security Techniques. Information Security Risk Management, supports the information security risk management processes specified in ISO/IEC 27001. ISO 27006, ISO 27006, Audit and Certification. The international standard detailing requirements for bodies providing audit and certification of information security management systems. ISO 27007 Auditing, Information Technology, Security Techniques, Guidelines for Information Security Management Systems Auditing. ISO/IEC 27008 Guidelines for Auditors on Information Security Controls. The international standard that provides guidelines for auditors on information security controls. ISO 27010, Information Technology, Security Techniques, Information Security Management for Intersector and Inter-Organizational Communications. ISO/IEC 27011-2016 Information Security for Telecommunications Organizations. Information Technology Security Techniques Code of Practice for Information Security Controls based on ISO/IEC 27002 for telecommunications organizations. ISO 27013 Integrated implementation of ISO 27001 and ISO 20000. The international standard for information security and service management system integration and implementation. ISO/IEC 27014:2013 The international standard for information security governance. ISO/IEC 27015:2012 provides advice and guidance on the application of ISO 27001 and ISO 27002 to financial service organizations. ISO/IEC 27016:2014 gives guidance on how an organization can make decisions to protect information and comprehend the economic consequences of these decisions. ISO/IEC 27017:2015 Information Security Controls for Cloud Services. ISO/IEC 27018:2014 provides control objectives, controls, and guidelines to enable organizations to protect personal identifiable information, PII, in line with the principles in ISO/IEC 29100 for public cloud computing. ISO/IEC 27019:2017 provides guidance based on ISO/IEC 27002:2013 applied to process control systems used by the energy utility industry. The ISO 27023 technical report shows the relationship between the revised versions of ISO 27001 and ISO 27002, and will be useful to all users who are migrating their information security management systems, ISMSs, from the 2005 to the 2013 iteration of ISO 27001 and ISO 27002. ISO/IEC 27031 Guidelines for ICT Readiness for Business Continuity. ISO/IEC 27032:2012 Information Technology Security Techniques Guidelines for Cybersecurity, helps you tackle cybersecurity once and for all. The standard offers practical advice on how to minimize cyber risks and guidance for managing a cybersecurity program. ISO/IEC 27033:1, the international standard for network security. ISO/IEC 27033:2 Design and implementation of network security. ISO/IEC 27033:3 Reference networking scenarios. ISO/IEC 270334 provides guidance on how to secure communication using security gateways. ISO/IEC 270335 standard provides guidelines for selecting, implementing, and monitoring the technical controls necessary to provide network security when using virtual private networks, VPNs, to interconnect networks or to connect remote users to networks. ISO/IEC 27034-1. Information Technology, Security Techniques, Application Security, Part 1, Overview and Concepts. The ISO 27034-2 standard aims to enable an organization to align or integrate its Organization Normative Framework, ONF, with its enterprise architecture and/or information security management system, ISMS, requirements, to ensure the security of its applications. ISO/IEC 27035-1 2016, ISO 27035 Standard, Information Security Incident Management. Information Technology Security Techniques. Information Security Incident Management Part 1, Principles of Incident Management. The ISO 27036-1 standard provides detailed guidance on implementing the ISO 27002 information security controls that deal with supplier relationships. It addresses the supplier relationship from both the supplier's and the acquirer's points of view. The ISO 27036-2 standard specifies information security requirements for defining, implementing, operating, monitoring, reviewing, maintaining and improving supplier and acquirer relationships. These requirements are suitable for all organizations, regardless of their type, size, and nature. ISO/IEC 27036-3:2013 offers guidance on the implementation of information security systems to secure complex ICT supply chains. ISO/IEC 27036-4, Guidelines for Security of Cloud Services. ISO/IEC 27037:2012 published Digital Evidence Identification, Collection, Acquisition, and Preservation Guidelines. ISO/IEC 27038:2014 published Information Security Digital Redaction Specification. ISO/IEC 27039 provides fundamental information about, and guidelines for the effective selection, deployment, and operation of intrusion detection and prevention systems, IDPSs. These standards are developed by the ISO/IEC bodies, but certification is provided by third parties. ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library. A set of best practices for IT service management consisting of 5 volumes. Service Strategy, addresses IT services strategy management, service portfolio management, IT services financial management, demand management, and business relationship management. Service Design, addresses design coordination, service catalog management, service level management, availability management, capacity management, IT service continuity management, information security management system, and supplier management. Service Transition addresses transition planning and support, change management, service asset and configuration management, release and deployment management, service validation and testing, change evaluation, and knowledge management. Service Operation, addresses event management, incident management, service request fulfillment, problem management, and access management. Continual Service Improvement, defines a 7-step process for improvement initiatives, including identifying the strategy, defining what will be measured, gathering the data, processing the data, analyzing the information and data, presenting and using the information, and implementing the improvement. COVID-5 The Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology, COBIT, is a framework for governance and management developed by ISACA, formerly the Information Systems Audit and Control Association, and the IT Governance Institute, ITGI. COBIT 5 has 5 principles. Meeting stakeholder needs. Covering the enterprise end-to-end. Applying a single integrated framework. Enabling a holistic approach. Separating governance from management. Framework. The main framework of COBIT guides organizations through best practices and standardization surrounding IT processes and infrastructure. The goal is to align IT with the overall business goals by getting IT on the same page as the rest of the company and to help other executives and senior managers better understand IT objectives. Process descriptions. COBIT includes language that anyone in the organization will understand so that CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, and other key players will easily understand terminology, processes and descriptions. It can help establish a solid ground for communication between IT and outside departments. Control objectives. This section offers an overview of high-level requirements that can help develop and improve every IT process, allowing businesses to adapt these to their own needs and goals. Management guidelines. The COBIT guide offers best practices for establishing objectives, process, and assigning task items or responsibilities across the organization. It also gives guidance on measuring performance and how the framework can integrate with other IT management frameworks. Maturity models. COBIT maturity models help businesses assess the maturity of their organization, understand how the process will grow with the organization and identify any potential problems that might arise down the line. The COBIT framework is popular in organizations that are subject to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. COSO, Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. COSO developed by the Institute of Management Accountants, IMA, the American Accounting Association, AAA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, ICPA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, IIA, and Financial Executives International, FE. COSO framework consists of 5 components. Control environment. Risk assessment. Control activities. Information and communication. Monitoring activities. Control environment provides the foundation for all other internal control components. Risk assessment establishes objectives through identification and analysis of relevant risks and determines whether anything will prevent the organization from meeting its objectives. Control activities, policies and procedures that are created to ensure compliance with management directives. Information and communication ensures appropriate information. Systems and effective communications processes are in place throughout the organization. Monitoring activities, activities that assess performance over time and identify deficiencies and corrective actions. Due care due diligence. Due care means that is doing the right thing, or doing what a reasonable person would do in a given situation. For example, installing and enforcing a policy, executing a procedure. Due diligence is an action created out of due care, and is described as the management of due care. For example, performing penetration tests or employee background checks to find holes would be due diligence, as it might not be mandated by law, but it's a good practice. Computer crime. Computer crime is an act performed by a knowledgeable computer user, sometimes referred to as a hacker, that illegally browses or steals a company's or individual's private information. In some cases, this person or group of individuals may be malicious and destroy or otherwise corrupt the computer or data files. Computer-assisted crime, criminal activities that are not unique to computers, but use computers as tools to assist the criminal to help commit a crime. This type of crime could be carried out without a computer but uses the computer to make committing the crime easier. For example, fraud, child pornography. Computer-targeted crime, crimes directed at computers, networks, and the information stored on these systems. For example, denial of service, password sniffers, attacking passwords. Computer incidental crime. An incidental computer crime occurs when a computer is involved in a computer crime without being the victim of the attack or the attacker. A computer being used as a zombie in a botnet is part of an incidental computer crime. Computer prevalence crime. A computer prevalence crime occurs due to the fact that computers are so widely used in today's world. This type of crime occurs only because computers exist. Software. Piracy is an example of this type of crime. A hacker is any skilled computer expert that uses their technical knowledge to overcome a problem. While hacker can refer to any skilled computer programmer, the term has become associated in popular culture with a security hacker, someone who, with their technical knowledge, uses bugs or exploits to break into computer systems. A cracker is someone who breaks into someone else's computer system, often on a network, bypasses passwords or licenses in computer programs, or in other ways intentionally breaches computer security. A cracker can be doing this for profit, maliciously, for some altruistic purpose or cause, or because the challenge is there. Some breaking and entering has been done ostensibly to point out weaknesses in a site's security system. Malware, or malicious software, is any program or file that is harmful to a computer user. Malware includes computer viruses, worms, Trojan horses spyware, ransomware, rootkit, remote access Trojan, rat, and screwware. A virus is the most common type of malware, and it's defined as a malicious program that can execute itself and spreads by infecting other programs or files. A worm is a type of malware that can self-replicate without a host program. Worms typically spread without any human interaction or directives from the malware authors. A Trojan horse is a malicious program that is designed to appear as a legitimate program. Once activated following installation, Trojans can execute their malicious functions. Spyware is a kind of malware that is designed to collect information and data on users and observe their activity without users' knowledge. A rootkit is a type of malware designed to obtain administrator-level access to the victim's system. Once installed, the program gives threat actors root or privileged access to the system. A backdoor virus or remote access Trojan, RAT, is a malicious program that secretly creates a backdoor into an infected system that allows threat actors to remote access it without alerting the user or the system's security programs. Ransomware is a type of malware. It restricts access to the computer system using encryption techniques, and demands a ransom be paid to the creator, of the malware. Scareware is a form of malware which uses social engineering to cause shock, anxiety, or the perception of a threat in order to manipulate users into buying unwanted software. Security awareness training and education is one of the best ways to mitigate computer attacks. CISSP Certified Information Security Professional Lecture Series, Software Licensing and Intellectual Property. Intellectual property, IP, refers to creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs, and symbols, names, and images used in commerce. Intellectual property is a tangible or intangible asset to which the owner has exclusive rights. A patent is an exclusive right granted for an invention, which is a product or a process that provides, in general, a new way of doing something, or offers a new technical solution to a problem. To get a patent, technical information about the invention must be disclosed to the public in a patent application. A trade secret is a formula, practice, process, design, instrument, pattern, commercial method, or collection of information not generally known by others by which a business can obtain an economic advantage over competitors or customers. After the trade secret is obtained by or disclosed to a competitor or the general public, it is no longer considered a trade secret. Most organizations that have trade secrets attempt to protect these secrets using non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. A trademark ensures that a symbol, sound, or expression that identifies a product or an organization is protected from being used by another organization. If the trademark is not registered, an organization should use a capital trademark. If the trademark is registered, an organization should use a capital R that is encircled. Copyright, or author's right, is a legal term used to describe the rights that creators have over their literary and artistic works. Works covered by copyright range from books, music, paintings, sculpture, and films, to computer programs, databases, advertisements, maps, and technical drawings. Software piracy is the illegal copying, distribution, or use of software. Security professionals must ensure that the organization takes measures to ensure that employees understand the implications of installing pirated software. Digital rights management, DRM, is a systematic approach to copyright protection for digital media. The purpose of DRM is to prevent unauthorized redistribution of digital media and restrict the ways consumers can copy content they purchased. CISSP Lecture Series Domain 1 Cybercrimes and Data Breaches. Cybercrime is the crime that involves a computer and a internet. Cybercriminals may use computer technology to access personal information, business trade secrets, or use the internet for exploitative or malicious purposes. Criminals can also use computers for communication and document or data storage. Critical infrastructure, including both private and public sector networks, are targeted by hackers. Cybercrimes are becoming more commonplace, more dangerous, and more sophisticated. The FBI is the lead federal agency for investigating cyber attacks by criminals, overseas adversaries, and terrorists. A data breach is an incident where information is stolen or taken from a system without the knowledge or authorization of the system's owner. A small company or large organization may suffer a data breach. Stolen data may involve sensitive, proprietary, or confidential information such as credit card numbers, customer data, trade secrets, or matters of national security. A data breach in 2016 exposed the names, phone numbers, and email addresses of more than 56 million people who use Uber Technologies Incorporated's service in the U.S. Organizations must have a plan in place to detect and respond to these incidents in the correct manner. Import-export controls. Many organizations today develop trade relationships with organizations that are located in other countries. Organizations must be aware of the export and import laws of the countries of both the source and destination countries. A number of countries have attempted to restrict the import of cryptography tools. Encryption technologies are some of the most restricted technologies in regard to import and export laws. United States does limit the export of encryption technologies for national security reasons. Other countries, such as China and Russia, limit the import of these same technologies because the countries do not want their people to have access to them. Publicly available technology or software, websites accessible to the public are free from most export laws, except for encryption technologies. Any organization that engages in export and import activities with other countries should ensure that legal advice is involved in the process so that all laws and regulations are followed. Organizations should implement the appropriate controls to ensure that personnel do not accidentally violate any import and export laws, regulations, or corporate policies. Transborder data flow. In today's world, the movement of data across borders is extremely important to the global economy. Transborder data transfers allow organizations and industries to digitally share information in a much quicker manner than in the past. As data moves from server to server and across networks, the data location and the location of the data host must be carefully considered. Data is subject to the laws and legal systems of every jurisdiction along its route. Jurisdiction is the power or right of a legal or political agency to exercise its authority over a person, subject matter, or territory. It gets even more complicated because jurisdiction can be affected when the organization that owns the data is in one country while the data itself is stored in a facility in another country. Security professionals must oversee the privacy and data protection laws of all jurisdictions that may affect the organization. For this reason, security professionals should develop a detailed data flow map for all organizational processes. Cloud computing presents its own risks because often it is hard to decide exactly where the data is stored. Organizations that store data in the cloud should work with their cloud service providers to ensure that all applicable laws and regulations regarding the security and privacy of data are followed. Privacy requirements. Privacy is the right of an individual to control the use of their personal information. When considering technology and its use today, privacy is a major concern of users. Privacy is an integral part of any security measures that an organization takes. Personally identifiable information, PII, is any piece of data that can be used alone or with other information to identify a single person. PII includes full name, identification numbers, including driver's license number and social security number, date of birth, place of birth, biometric data, financial account numbers, both bank account and credit card numbers, and digital identities, including social media names and tags. Security professionals must ensure that they understand international, national, state, and local regulations and laws regarding privacy and PII. Organizations must ensure that they comply with all laws and regulations regarding privacy. Compliance. Compliance means conforming to a rule, such as a specification, policy, standard, or law. An organization must comply with governmental laws, regulations, and rules. Compliance with standards bodies and industry associations can be considered optional in some cases, while it is mandatory for contractual obligations. The Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI-DSS, is an information security standard for organizations that handle branded credit cards from the major card schemes. The PCI standard is mandated by the card brands and administered by the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council. The standard was created to increase controls around cardholder data to reduce credit card fraud. Privacy compliance. Privacy compliance is a company's accordance with established personal information protection guidelines, specifications, or legislation. Privacy compliance has become a common business concern due to an increasing number of regulations designed to protect unauthorized access to personally identifiable information. Privacy compliance came into the spotlight in 2013 when former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden leaked details surrounding a previously undisclosed surveillance program called PRISM. Details of the PRISM program's scope drew controversy due to the program's violation of rules such as the Safe Harbor Policy Agreement established by the United States and the European Union, EU, in 2000 to regulate the ways in which U.S. companies export and handle the personal data of European citizens. Privacy compliance has also gained more widespread attention due to the high-profile hacks of customer information at large retailers such as Target Corp and Home Depot. EU Data Protection Directive, also known as Directive 95/46/EC, is designed to protect the privacy and protection of all personal data collected for or about European Union citizens, especially as it relates to processing, using, or exchanging such data. These data protection rules apply not only when responsible parties are established or operate within the EU, but also whenever the controller uses equipment located inside the EU to process personal data. Privacy requirements compliance is primarily concerned with the confidentiality of data, particularly PII. PII is increasingly coming under attack in our modern world. Almost daily, a new company, organization, or even government entity announces that PII on customers, employees, or even government agents has been compromised. Both the US government and the European Union have enacted laws, regulations, and directives on the collection, handling, storage, and transmission of PII, with the goal of protecting the disclosure of this data to unauthorized entities. Security professionals are responsible for ensuring that management understands the requirements and the possible results of non-compliance. Staying up to date on the latest developments regarding PII is very important. Legal and regulatory compliance requirements. Law is a system of rules that state what we can and cannot do. These rules are put together to ensure that everyone's rights are protected so that we can live freely and peacefully. Whether it's paying for meals, stopping at traffic lights, the law is required to protect people from being harmed by others. Breaking the law may result in having to face certain consequences depending on how serious the offense is. It could be anywhere from paying a small fine all the way to some serious jail time. Law has been defined both as the science of justice and the art of justice. Legal system refers to a procedure or process for interpreting and enforcing the law. It elaborates the rights and responsibilities in a variety of ways. Security professionals must understand the different legal systems that are used throughout the world and the components that make up the systems. Civil code law, developed in Europe, is based on written laws. It is a rule-based law and does not rely on precedents in any way. The most common legal system in the world. Civil code law does not require lower courts to follow higher court decisions. Common law, developed in England, is based on customs and precedent because no written laws were available. Common law reflects on the morals of the people and relies heavily on precedents. In this system, the lower court must follow any precedents that exist due to higher court decisions. This type of law is still in use today in the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, and Canada. Today, common law uses a jury-based system, which can be waived so the case is decided by a judge. Common law is divided into three systems: criminal law, civil/tort law, and administrative/regulatory law. Criminal law covers any actions that are considered harmful to others. It deals with conduct that violates public protection laws. But the prosecution must provide guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Usually the civil body, such as the state or Federal government, that establishes the law that is violated. In criminal law, guilty. Parties might be imprisoned and/or fined. Criminal law is based on common law and statutory law. Statutory law is handed down by federal, state, or local legislating bodies. Civil law deals with wrongs that have been committed against an individual or organization. A defendant is liable for damages to the victim if the defendant had a duty of care to the victim, breached that duty, was negligent, and was the actual cause of harm to the victim. Under civil law, the victim is entitled to seek compensatory, punitive, and statutory damages. Compensatory damages are those that compensate the victim for his losses. Punitive damages are those that are handed down by juries to punish the liable party. Statutory damages are those that are based on damages established by laws. In civil law, the liable party has caused injury to the victim. In the United States, civil law allows senior officials of an organization to be held liable for any civil wrongdoing by the organization. So if an organization is negligent, the senior officials can be pursued by any parties that were wronged. In administrative law, standards of performance or conduct are set by government agencies for organizations and industries to follow. Common sectors that are covered by administrative law include public utilities, communications, banking, safety and environmental protection regulations, and health care. Customary law is based on the customs of a country or region. Customary law is not used in most systems in isolation, but rather incorporated into many mixed law systems, such as those used in many African countries, China, and Japan. Monetary fines or public service is the most common form of restitution in this legal system. Religious law is based on religious beliefs. Although most religious law will be based on a particular religion and its primary written rules, cultural differences can vary from country to country and will affect the laws that are enforced. Mixed law combines two or more of the other law types. The most often mixed law uses civil law and common law. In American law, a regulation is a rule that is laid down by an administrative agency pursuant to an enabling statute, to wit, a piece of legislation that says this agency shall do these functions, and it may promulgate regulations consistent with that end. A rule is a rule of court. Security professionals must be aware of the laws, rules, and regulations, at a minimum understand how those laws affect the operations of their organization. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, of 1999. GLBA affects all financial institutions, including banks, loan companies, insurance companies, investment companies, and credit card providers. It provides guidelines for securing all financial information and prohibits sharing financial information with third parties. This act directly affects the security of PII. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, CFAA, of 1986. CFAA affects any entities that might engage in hacking of protected computers as defined in the Act. It was amended in 1989, 1994, 1996. In 2001 by the Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism, USA Patriot Act. In 2002. And in 2008 by the Identity Theft, Intent and Restitution Act. A protected computer is a computer used exclusively by a financial institution or the U.S. government, or used in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce or communication, including a computer located outside the United States that is used in a manner that affects interstate or foreign commerce or communication of the United States. The Federal Privacy Act of 1974 affects any computer that contains records used by a federal agency. It provides guidelines on collection, maintenance, use, and Dissemination of PII about individuals that is maintained in systems of records by federal agencies on collecting, maintaining, using, and distributing PII. Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, of 1978. FISA affects law enforcement and intelligence agencies. It was the first act to give procedures for the physical and electronic surveillance and collection of foreign intelligence information between foreign powers and agents of foreign powers, and only applied to traffic within the United States. It was amended by the USA Patriot Act of 2001, the FISA Amendments Act of 2008, and the USA Freedom Act of 2015. Electronic Communications Privacy Act, ECPA, of 1986. ECPA affects law enforcement and intelligence agencies. It extended government restrictions on wiretaps from telephone calls to include transmissions of electronic data by computer and prohibited access to stored electronic communications. It was amended by the Communications Assistance to Law Enforcement Act, CALIA, of 1994. The USA Patriot Act of 2001, and the FISA Amendments Act of 2008. The United States Federal Sentencing Guidelines of 1991 affects individuals and organizations convicted of felonies and serious, Class A, misdemeanors. It provides guidelines to prevent sentencing disparities that existed across the United States. Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, CALIA, of 1994. CALIA affects law enforcement and intelligence agencies. It requires telecommunications carriers and manufacturers of telecommunications equipment to modify and design their equipment, facilities, and services to ensure that they have built-in surveillance capabilities. This allows federal agencies to monitor all telephone, broadband internet, and voice over IP, VoIP, traffic in real time. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, PIPTA. PIPTA affects how private sector organizations collect, use, and disclose personal information in the course of commercial business in Canada. The Act was written to address European Union, EU, concerns over the security of PII in Canada. The law requires organizations to obtain consent when they collect, use, or disclose personal information and to have personal information policies that are clear, understandable, and readily available. Basel II affects financial institutions. It addresses minimum capital requirements, supervisory review, and market discipline. Its main purpose is to protect against risks the banks and other financial institutions face. It is an international accord, and compliance is not mandatory. Federal Information Security Management Act, FISMA, of 2002. FISMA affects every federal agency. It requires the federal agencies to develop, document, and implement an agency-wide information security program. The Economic Espionage Act of 1996 covers a multitude of issues because of the way the act was structured. This act affects companies that have trade secrets and any individuals who plan to use encryption technology for criminal activities. A trade secret does not need to be tangible to be protected by this act. Per this law, theft of a trade secret is now a federal crime, and the U.S. Sentencing Commission must provide specific information in its reports regarding encryption or scrambling technology that is used illegally. USA Patriot Act of 2001. The USA Patriot Act affects law enforcement and intelligence agencies in the United States. Its purpose is to enhance the investigatory tools that law enforcement can use, including email communications, telephone records, internet communications, medical records, and financial records. When this law was enacted, it amended several other laws, including FISA and the ECPA of 1986. The Healthcare and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010 affects healthcare and educational organizations. This act increased some of the security measures that must be taken to protect healthcare information. The USA Freedom Act of 2015 reauthorizes parts of the USA Patriot Act but dissolves its notorious bulk data collection of Americans' phone records and Internet metadata. European Union has implemented several laws and regulations that affect security and privacy. European Union principles on privacy include strict laws to protect private data. European Union Data Protection Directive provides direction on how to follow the laws set forth in the principles. European Union created the Safe Harbor Privacy Principles to help guide U.S. organizations in compliance with the EU Principles on Privacy. Safe Harbor is an entity that conforms to all the requirements of the EU Principles on Privacy. Data should be collected in accordance with the law. Information collected about an individual cannot be shared with other organizations unless given explicit permission by the individual. Information transferred to other organizations can be transferred only if the sharing organization has adequate security in place. Data should be used only for the purpose for which it was collected. Data should be used only for a reasonable period of time. A data haven is a country that fails to legally protect personal data, with the main aim being to attract companies engaged in the collection of the data. The Safe Harbor Privacy Principles were replaced by the EU-US Privacy Shield. It provided a framework for transatlantic personal data exchanges for commercial purposes between the European Union and the United States. The EU Electronic Security Directive defines electronic signature principles. The EU Electronic Security Directive defines electronic signature principles. In this directive, a signature must be uniquely linked to the signer and to the data to which it relates so that any subsequent data change is detectable. The signature must be capable of identifying the signer. Beginning on May 25, 2018, the members of the EU should begin applying the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. The GDPR applies to EU-based organizations that collect or process the personal data of EU residents and to organizations outside the EU that monitor behavior or offer goods and services to EU residents. It gives a wider definition of personal and sensitive data to include online identifiers and genetic and biometrics data, such as cookies, IP address, health information, biometric data, and genetic information. The GDPR affects service providers that process personal data on behalf of an organization, including cloud services, call centers, and payroll services. Organizations must follow stricter rules for consent as a legal basis for processing. Organizations must be transparent regarding what information is collected and how the information is processed. Organizations must allow individuals to correct inaccurate personal data. Organizations must allow individuals to request that their personal data be erased under certain conditions. Organizations must allow individuals to move personal data from one service provider to another. Organizations must not use automated processing as the sole decision maker. Under GDPR, organizations are obligated to provide accountability by maintaining a record of all data processing activities. A Data Protection Impact Assessment, DPIA, is mandatory if processing activity is likely to result in a high risk to an individual's rights. Organizations must keep personal data secure through appropriate technical and organizational measures. Organizations that are public authorities, monitoring individuals on a large scale, or processing sensitive data must name a data protection officer. For all other organizations, a data protection officer is recommended but not required. Data transfer outside the EU is allowed only if appropriate safeguards are in place. Organizations that do not comply with GDPR can be fines up to 20 million euros. In addition, they may have to compensate victims for damage claims. Non-compliance in GDPR may result in reputational damage and consumer loss of trust. Understand, adhere to, and promote professional ethics. Ethics is the study of moral obligation involving the distinction between right and wrong. Professional ethics are a defined set of rules that a member of a profession must abide by to maintain their good standing with the licensing authority that permits them to operate within their profession. An example, for lawyers, would be the Model Rules of Professional Conduct, adopted and maintained by the American Bar Association. Security professionals, particularly those who hold the CISSP certification, should understand the ethics that are published by the International Information Systems Security Certification Consortium, ISC, the Computer Ethics Institute, the Internet Architecture Board, IAB, and the organization they are employed by. ISC, Code of Ethics. ISC provides a strict code of ethics for its certificate holders. All certificate holders must follow the Code of Ethics. Any reported violations of the code are investigated. Certificate holders who are found to be guilty of violation will have their certification revoked. The 4 mandatory canons for the Code of Ethics are as follows: protect society, the common good, necessary public trust and confidence, and the infrastructure. Act honorably, honestly, justly, responsibly, and legally. Provide diligent and competent service to principals. Advance and protect the profession. Any certificate holders are required to report any actions by other certificate holders that they feel are in violation of the code. If a certificate holder is reported, a peer review committee will investigate the actions and make a decision as to the certificate holder's standing. Certification is a privilege that must be earned and maintained. Certificate holders are expected to complete certain educational requirements to prove their continued competence in all aspects of security. They are also expected to promote the understanding and acceptance of prudent information security measures. Computer Ethics Institute. The Computer Ethics Institute created the 10 Commandments of Computer Ethics. Do not use a computer for harm. Do not interfere with the computer work of other people. Do not snoop around in the computer files of other people. Do not use a computer to steal. Do not use a computer to lie. Do not install and use licensed software unless you have paid for it. Do not use another person's computer unless you have permission or have paid the appropriate compensation for said usage. Do not appropriate another person's intellectual output. Consider the consequences of the program you are writing or the system you are designing. Always use a computer in ways that ensure consideration and respect of other people and their property. Internet Architecture Board. Internet Architecture Board oversees the design, engineering, and management of the Internet. Internet Architecture Board meets regularly to review Internet standardization recommendations. Ethics statements issued by the Internet Architecture Board usually detail any acts that they deem irresponsible. These actions include wasting resources, destroying data integrity, compromising privacy, and accessing resources that users are not authorized to access. Organizational Code of Ethics. Organizations should develop an internal ethics statement and ethics program. By adopting a formal statement and program, the organization is stressing to its employees that they are expected to act in an ethical manner in all business dealings. Several laws in the United States can affect the development and adoption of an organizational ethics program. If an organization adopts an ethics program, the liability of the organization is often limited, even when the employees are guilty of wrongdoing, provided the organization ensures that personnel have been instructed on the organization's ethics. Develop, document, and implement security policy, standards, procedures, and guidelines. Sensitive and classified information should be protected mainly based on their value and sensitivity. In order to achieving organization's information security goals, we need to implement strategic, tactical, and operational plan. Strategic plans are aligned with the strategic business and information technology goals. Strategic plans guide the long-term security activities, 3 to 5 years or more. Tactical plan is a midterm plan developed to provide more details on accomplishing the goals set in the strategic plan. Tactical plans achieve the goals of the strategic plan and are shorter in length, 6–18 months. Some examples of tactical plans are project plans, acquisition plans, hiring plans, budget plans, maintenance plans, support plans, and system development plans. Operational plan is a short-term, highly detailed plan based on the strategic and tactical plans. It is valid or useful only for a short time. Examples of operational plans are training plans, system deployment plans, and product design plans. Policies are documented principles that guide decisions to achieve intended outcomes. An example of this is employees should not reuse their password on any other network. Policies are divided into level of policies and categories of policies. Level of policies are divided into organizational security policies, system-specific security policies, and issue-specific security policies. Categories of policies are divided into regulatory security policies, advisory security policies, and informative security policies. An organizational security policy typically high-level policies that can cover a large number of security controls. The primary information security policy is issued by the company to ensure that all employees who use information technology assets within the breadth of the organization, or its networks, comply with its stated rules and guidelines. A system-specific security policy details how to set up and maintain individual systems. It addresses security for a specific computer, network, technology, or application. This policy type is much more technically focused than an issue-specific security policy. An issue-specific security policy addresses specific security issues. Issue-specific policies include email privacy policies, virus checking policies, employee termination policies, no expectation of privacy policies, and so on. Issue-specific policy support the organizational security policy. Regulatory security policies address specific industry regulations, including mandatory standards. Examples of industries that must consider regulatory security policies include healthcare facilities, public utilities, and financial institutions. Advisory security policies provide instruction on acceptable and unacceptable activities. In most cases, this policy is considered to be strongly suggested, not compulsory. This type of policy usually gives examples of possible consequences if users engage in unacceptable activities. Informative security policies provide information on certain topics and act as an educational tool. Policies are broad and provide the foundation for development of processes, procedure standards, baselines, guidelines, and procedures. A process is a structured set of activities designed to accomplish a specific objective. For example, an organization may define a process for how customers enter an online order, how the payment is processed, and how the order is fulfilled after the payment is processed. Procedures are a documented sequence of steps designed to support standards and policies around deployment and operations. Procedures, if followed, will ensure the timely and satisfactory application of those previously stated standards and policies. Standards describe how policies will be implemented within an organization. For example, all critical data will be encrypted during transmission and storage. They are mandatory actions or rules that are tactical in nature, meaning they provide the steps necessary to achieve security. Guidelines are recommended actions that are much more flexible than standards, thereby providing allowance for circumstances that can occur. Guidelines provide guidance when standards do not apply. A baseline is a reference point that is defined and captured to be used as a future reference. Although capturing baselines is important, using those baselines to assess the security state is just as important. Even the most comprehensive baselines are useless if they are never used. Business continuity and disaster recovery concepts. Business continuity is the ability of an organization to maintain essential functions during, as well as after, a disaster has occurred. Disaster recovery is a piece of business continuity planning. Disaster recovery is specifically to the information technology, IT, and data-centric functions of the business. Some basic concepts in business continuity and disaster recovery planning are disruptions, disasters, disaster recovery and the disaster recovery plan, DRP, continuity planning and the business continuity plan, BCP, business impact analysis, BIA, contingency plan, availability, reliability. A disruption is any unplanned event that results in the temporary interruption of any organizational asset, including processes, functions, and devices. Disruptions are grouped into three main categories: non-disaster, disaster, and catastrophe. Non-disasters are temporary interruptions that occur due to malfunction or failure. Non-disasters might or might not require public notification and are much easier to recover from than disasters or catastrophes. A catastrophe is a disaster that has a much wider and much longer impact. A disaster is considered a catastrophe if facilities are destroyed. A disaster is a suddenly occurring event that has a long-term negative impact on life. A disaster is an emergency that goes beyond the normal response of resources. Disasters require more effort for recovery than no disasters but less than catastrophes. A disaster usually affects a wide geographical area and results in severe damage, injury, loss of life, and loss of property. Any disaster has negative financial and reputational effects on the organization. The causes of disasters are categorized into three main areas according to origin: technological disasters, human-caused disasters, and natural disasters. Technological disasters occur when a device fails. This failure can be the result of device defects, incorrect implementation, incorrect monitoring, or human error. Technological disasters are not usually intentional. If a technological disaster is not recovered from in a timely manner, an organization might suffer a financial collapse. If a disaster occurs because of a deliberate attack against an organization's infrastructure, the disaster is considered a human-caused disaster even if the attack is against a specific device or technology. In the past, all technological disasters were actually considered human-caused disasters because technological disasters are usually due to human error or negligence. Human-caused disasters occur through human intent or error. Human-caused disasters include enemy attacks, bombings, sabotage, arson, terrorism, strikes, or other job actions, infrastructure failures, personnel unavailability due to emergency evacuation, and mass hysteria. Human-caused disasters are intentional. Natural disasters occur because of a natural hazard. Natural disasters include flood, tsunami, earthquake, hurricane, tornado, and other such natural events. A fire that is not the result of arson is also considered a natural disaster. The primary concern during any disaster is personnel safety. Disaster recovery minimizes the effect of a disaster and includes the steps necessary to resume normal operation. Disaster recovery must take into consideration all organizational resources, functions, and personnel. Efficient disaster recovery will sustain an organization during and after a disruption due to a disaster. Each organizational function or system will have its own disaster recovery plan, DRP. Disaster Recovery Plan (DRP) for each function or system is created as a direct result of that function or system being identified as part of the Business Continuity Plan, BCP. The Disaster Recovery Plan (DRP) is implemented when the emergency occurs and includes the steps to restore functions and systems. The goal of disaster recovery is to minimize or prevent property damage and prevent loss of life. Continuity planning deals with identifying the impact of any disaster and ensuring that a viable recovery plan for each function and system is implemented. Its primary focus is how to carry out the organizational functions when a disruption occurs. Business Continuity Plan (BCP) considers all aspects that are affected by a disaster, including functions, systems, personnel, and facilities. Business Continuity Plan (BCP) lists and prioritizes the services that are needed, particularly the telecommunications and IT functions. A Business Impact Analysis, BIA, is a functional analysis that occurs as part of business continuity and disaster recovery. Performing a thorough business impact analysis BIA will help business units understand the impact of a disaster. The resulting document that is produced from a business impact analysis BIA lists the critical and necessary business functions, their resource dependencies, and their level of criticality to the overall organization. A contingency plan is sometimes referred to as Plan B, because it can be also used as an alternative for action if expected results fail to materialize. Contingency planning is a component of business continuity, disaster recovery, and risk management. Availability is a main component of business continuity planning. The organization must determine the acceptable level of availability for each function or system. If the availability of a resource falls below this defined level, then specific actions must be followed to ensure that availability is restored. With regard to availability, most of the unplanned downtime of functions and systems is attributed to hardware failure. Availability places focus on technology. Reliability is the ability of a function or system to consistently perform according to specifications. It is vital in business continuity to ensure that the organization's processes can continue to operate. Reliability focus on processes. Business continuity scope and plan. The most important development of the business continuity planning is senior management. Senior management support of business continuity and disaster recovery drives the overall organizational view of the process. Without senior management support, business continuity will fail. To ensure that the development of the business continuity planning, BCP, is successful, senior management must define the BCP scope. Many organizations have developed standards and guidelines for performing business contingency planning. One of the most popular standards is NIST Special Publication 800-34 Revelation 1, Contingency Planning Guide for Federal Information Systems. 1. Develop contingency planning policy. 2. Conduct business impact analysis, BIA. 3. Identify preventive controls. 4. Create contingency strategies. 5. Develop a contingency plan. 6. Conduct contingency plan testing, training, and exercises. 7. Maintain the plan. Develop contingency planning policy. The contingency planning policy statement should define the organization's overall contingency objectives and establish the organizational framework and responsibilities. For system contingency planning to be successful, senior management, most likely the CIO, must support a contingency program and be included in the process to develop the program policy. Conduct the business impact analysis. A business impact analysis, BIA, predicts the consequences of disruption of a business function and process and gathers information needed to develop recovery strategies. Potential loss scenarios should be identified during a risk assessment. Identify preventive controls. The outage impacts identified in the BIA may be mitigated or eliminated through preventive measures that deter, detect, and/or reduce impacts to the system. Feasible and cost-effective, preventive methods are preferable. Create contingency strategies. Organizations are required to adequately mitigate the risk arising from use of information and information systems in the execution of mission business processes. This includes backup methods, off-site storage, recovery, alternate sites, and equipment replacement. Develop contingency plan. An organization should develop the contingency plan, including backup, monitor and recovery solutions. This plan must document the roles and responsibilities of personnel in the organization as part of this plan. Plan testing, training, and exercises. Testing, training, and exercises for business continuity should be carried out regularly. Based on CISSP 884, organizations should conduct testing, training, and exercises periodically. Maintain the plan. To be effective, the plan must be maintained that accurately reflects system requirements, procedures, organizational structure, and policies. As a general rule, the plan should be reviewed for accuracy and completeness at an organization-defined frequency or whenever significant changes occur to any element of the plan. Business Continuity Plan, BCP, focuses on sustaining an organization's mission business processes during and after a disruption. Continuity of Operations, COOP, Plan, focuses on restoring an organization's mission essential functions, MEFs, at an alternate site and performing those functions for up to 30 days before returning to normal operations. Crisis Communications Plan, documents standard procedures for internal and external communications in the event of a disruption using a crisis communications plan. It also provides various formats for communications appropriate to the incident. Critical Infrastructure Protection, CIP, Plan, a set of policies and procedures that serve to protect and recover these assets and mitigate risks and vulnerabilities. Cyber Incident Response Plan, establishes procedures to address cyber attacks against an organization's information systems. Disaster Recovery Plan, DRP, an information system-focused plan designed to restore operability of the target system, application, or computer facility infrastructure at an alternate site after an emergency. Information System Contingency Plan, ISCP, provides established procedures for the assessment and recovery of a system following a system disruption. Occupant Emergency Plan, OEP, outlines first response procedures for occupants of a facility in the event of a threat or incident to the health and safety of personnel, the environment, or property. Business Impact Analysis, BIA, development. Business Continuity Plan, BCP, development depends on the development of the Business Impact Analysis, BIA, development and risk assessment. Business Impact Analysis, BIA, helps the organization to understand impact a disruptive event. Business Impact Analysis, BIA, identifying loss of critical business functions and supporting resources, due to an accident, disaster, emergency, and/or threat. A risk assessment identifies potential hazards such as a hurricane, earthquake, fire, supplier failure, utility outage, or cyber attack and vulnerability. The four main steps of the business impact analysis BIA are: 1. Identify critical processes and resources. 2. Identify outage impacts, and estimate downtime. 3. Identify resource requirements. 4. Identify recovery priorities. Identify critical processes and resources. BCP Committee first identify all the business units or functional areas within the organization. BCP team should select which individuals will be responsible for gathering data. Data gathering techniques are questionnaires, interviews, and surveys. Organization's business processes, functions, and the resources should be documented. Identify outage impacts, and estimate downtime. Mean time to repair, MTTR, the average time required to repair a single failed component or device when a disaster or disruption occurs. Mean time between failure, MTBF, the estimated amount of time a device will operate before a failure occurs. Recovery time objective, RTO, the time period after a disaster or disruptive event within which a resource or function must be restored to avoid unacceptable consequences. Work recovery time, WRT, the amount of time that is needed to verify system and/or data integrity. Recovery point objective, RPO, the maximum targeted period in which data might be lost from an IT service due to a major incident. Organizational resource and function criticality levels are critical, urgent, important, normal, and non-essential. Critical resources are most vital to the organization's operation and should be restored within minutes or hours of the disaster. Urgent resources should be restored within 24 hours but are not considered as important as critical resources. Important resources should be restored within 72 hours but are not considered as important as critical or urgent resources. Normal resources should be restored within 7 days but are not considered as important as critical, urgent, or important resources. Non-essential resources should be restored within 30 days. Identify resource requirements. Organization must document the resource requirements for every resource that would need to be restored, including device name, operating system, platform version, hardware requirements, and device interrelationships. Resource requirements should also consider any human resources requirements. Identify recovery priorities. 3 main levels of recovery priorities should be used: high, medium, and low. Recoverability is the ability of a function or system to be recovered in the event of a disaster or disruptive event. Fault tolerance is provided when a backup component begins operation when the primary component fails. Priority for any CISSP should be the safety of human life. Personnel security policies and procedures. The biggest security threats are inside your company. Personnel are responsible for major security issues in an organization. Organization implement the appropriate personnel security policies and procedure. Personnel security policies and procedures are candidate screening and hiring, employment agreements and policies, onboarding and termination processes, vendor, consultant, and contractor agreements and controls, compliance policy requirements, privacy policy requirements, and job rotation and separation of duties. Candidate screening and hiring. Personnel screening should performed before offer of employment. Personnel screening are criminal history, work history, background investigations, credit history, driving records, substance abuse, testing, reference checks, education and licensing verification, social security number verification and validation, and check for a suspected terrorist watch list. Job descriptions should contain the roles and responsibilities and experience or education. Employers can request criminal records for most potential employees for the past 7 years. Work history should be verified. Former employers should be contacted to confirm dates employed, positions, performance, and reason for leaving. Background investigation should research any claim made on the applicant's application or resume. Credit history ensures that personnel who are involved in financial transactions for the organization will not be risks for financial fraud. Driving records are necessary if the applicant will be operating a motor vehicle as part of his or her job. But often this type of check for other applicants can help reveal lifestyle issues, such as driving under the influence or license suspension, that can cause employment problems later. Substance abuse. Testing will reveal to the employer any drug use. 2 types of reference checks are performed, work and personal. Work reference checks verify employment history. Personal reference checks contact individuals supplied by the applicant and ask questions regarding the applicant's capabilities, skills, and personality. Education and licensing verification. Employers can request transcripts from educational institutions. Licensing or certification body can verify the license or certification. Social Security number verification and validation can be achieved by contacting the Social Security Administration. Such a check ensures that the Social Security information is accurate. Organization should determine candidate screening and hiring needs based on the organization's needs. Employment agreements and policies. Employment agreements and policies are confidentiality agreement, non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and acceptable use policy, AUP. Personnel hiring procedures should start signing confidentiality agreement documents. Non-disclosure agreement NDA is to protect data from unauthorized disclosure. NDAs are generally used to establish data ownership, protect information from disclosure, prevent forfeiture of patent rights, and define handling standards including disposal. An acceptable use policy AUP details appropriate use of information systems, handling standards, monitoring, and privacy expectations. By signing the agreement, the user acknowledges, understands, and agrees to the stated rules and obligations. Organizations have an employee handbook and hiring information that must be communicated to the employee. Code of conduct, conflict of interest, and ethics agreements should also be signed at this time. Employee onboarding and offboarding policies. Onboarding is the process of integrating a new employee with a company and culture, as well as providing the tools and information. User orientation and user provisioning is part of onboarding. User orientation is the initial task of completing paperwork, introductions, and initial training. User provisioning is the process of creating user accounts and credentials, assigning access rights and permissions, and providing assets. Each department should have documented procedures related to user onboarding. Offboarding is the process for transitioning employees out of an organization and is also referred to as termination. Offboarding are documenting separation details, tasks and responsibilities prior to departure, knowledge transfer, exit interview. Termination must be handled differently based on whether the termination is friendly or unfriendly. Personnel termination procedures. Ensure that the organizational property is returned, user access is removed at the appropriate time, and exit interviews are completed. Unfriendly terminations. Organizational procedures must be proactive to prevent damage to organizational assets. The security department should be notified early in the process of an unfriendly termination. Vendor, consultant, and contractor agreements and controls. A vendor contributes goods or services. A consultant is a professional who provides expert advice in a particular area such as security, electronic or physical management, education, accountancy, law, human resources, marketing and public relations, finance, engineering. A contractor is a person or company that performs work on a contract basis. Organizations often work with vendors, consultants, and contractors. Third party that is given access to an organization's facility should be given limited access to the facility and other organizational assets. An organization should implement appropriate controls to ensure that these third parties do not cause security issues. Compliance policy requirements. Management must also ensure that appropriate compliance are in place during employment. Privacy policy requirements. Personnel expect a certain amount of privacy even in their workplace. Companies should implement a no expectation of privacy policy that details what areas personnel should consider as not being private, including company email, internet access, and access to high security areas. Closed circuit televisions, CCTVs, and other video recording equipment are becoming commonplace in the workplace. It is considered acceptable to conduct video monitoring of parking areas, work areas, and high security areas. Using video monitoring in bathrooms, locker rooms, or other areas is never a good idea. Security professionals should ensure that personnel are regularly reminded of the no expectation of privacy policy of the organization is accomplished using screen banners. Job rotation. Job rotation ensures that more than one person fulfills the job tasks of a single position within an organization. This job rotation ensures that more than one person is capable of performing those tasks, providing redundancy. Separation of duties. Separation of duties ensures that one person is not capable of compromising organizational security. Split knowledge, a variation of separation of duties, ensures that no single employee knows all the details to perform a task. An example is two managers being required to turn keys simultaneously in separate locations to launch a missile. Information security professionals should work with human resources personnel to ensure that the appropriate personnel security policies and procedures are in place. Risk management concepts. Being able to be repeated controllably is one key element in risk management. Toba Beta, master of stupidity. Risk is part of lives. Risk, as defined in the American Heritage Dictionary, is the possibility of loss. Risk management is the process of identifying and assessing risk, reducing it to an acceptable level, and ensuring it remains at that level. Risk management concept. Terms: asset, asset valuation, vulnerability, threat, threat agent, exploit, risk, exposure. Countermeasure: risk appetite, attack, and breach. Asset and asset valuation. An asset is any resource, product, process, system, or other thing that has value to an organization and must be protected. There are two types of asset: physical or tangible assets and intangible assets. Physical or tangible assets are equipment or computers that can be touched. Intangible assets are information or intellectual property that hold value to the organization. Assets should be documented. Three basic elements used to determine the value of an asset are initial and maintenance costs, organizational, or internal, value, public, or external, value. Initial and maintenance costs is a tangible dollar value that may include purchasing, licensing, development, or acquisition, maintenance, and support costs. Organizational, or internal, value is difficult and intangible value. It may include the cost of creating, acquiring, and recreating information, and the business impact or loss if the information is lost or compromised. It can also include liability costs associated with privacy issues, personal injury, and death. Public or external value is difficult and often intangible cost. Public value can include loss of proprietary information or processes, as well as loss of business reputation. Organizations will also factor value of the asset to adversaries. Organizations will factor cost to replace the asset if lost. Organizations will also factor operational and productivity costs incurred if the asset is unavailable. Organizations will factor liability issues if the asset is compromised. Vulnerability. A vulnerability is a weakness. Vulnerabilities can occur in software, hardware, or personnel. Examples of vulnerabilities are a data center without proper backup power. Threat. A threat occurs when vulnerability is identified or exploited and is a potential danger. A threat is a negative action that may harm a system. Threat agent. A threat is carried out by a threat agent. Exploit. An exploit is when a threat agent successfully takes advantage of a vulnerability. Risk. A risk is the probability that a threat agent will exploit a vulnerability and the impact if the threat is carried out. Risk is expressed in terms of the likelihood and impact of a threat event. Exposure. An exposure occurs when an organizational asset is exposed to losses. Countermeasure. A control countermeasure or safeguard is a tactic, mechanism, or strategy. Countermeasure reduces or eliminates a vulnerability. Countermeasure reduces or eliminates the likelihood that a threat agent will be able to exploit a vulnerability. Countermeasure reduces or eliminates the impact of an exploit. Risk appetite. Risk appetite is the level of risk an organization is prepared to accept. Attack. An attack is any event that violates an organization's security or privacy policies. Breach. A breach is an attack that has been successful in reaching its goal. Senior management must commit to the risk management process. Risk management concepts. Opportunity and risk come in pairs. Bangambiki Habyaramana, the Great Pearl of Wisdom. Senior management must commit to the risk management process. Risk management policy. Risk management policy is a formal statement of senior management's commitment to risk management. Risk management policy also provides risk management direction. A risk management policy must include the overall risk management plan and list the risk management team and list the risk management team's objectives, responsibilities, and roles, acceptable level of risk, risk identification process, risk and safeguards mapping, safeguard effectiveness, monitoring process and targets, and future risk analysis plans and tasks. Risk management team. Risk management team's goal is to protect the organization and assets from risk in the most cost-effective way. Risk assessment. A risk assessment is a tool used in risk management to identify vulnerabilities and threats, assess the impact of those vulnerabilities and threats, and determine which controls to implement. Risk assessment analysis has 4 goals. Identify assets and asset value. Identify vulnerabilities and threats. Calculate threat probability and business impact. Balance threat impact with countermeasure cost. Information and asset value and costs. The 6 following considerations can be used to determine the asset's value. Value to owner. Work required to develop or obtain the asset. Costs to maintain the asset. Damage that would result if the asset were lost. Cost that competitors would pay for asset. Penalties that would result if the asset were lost. Identity threats and vulnerabilities. Identify vulnerabilities and threats to an asset, considering the threat agents is. First, threat agents can be grouped into 6 categories: human, natural, technical, physical and operational. Human includes both malicious and non-malicious. Insiders and outsiders. Terrorists, spies, and terminated personnel. Natural includes floods, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, or other natural disasters or weather events. Technical includes hardware and software failure, malicious code, and new technologies. Physical includes CCTV issues, perimeter measures failure, and biometric failure. Environmental includes power and other utility failure, traffic issues, biological warfare, and hazardous material issues. Operational includes any process or procedure that can affect CIA. When the vulnerabilities and threats have been identified, loss potential must be determined. Loss potential is determined by using the likelihood of the event with the impact. An event with a high likelihood and a high impact would be given more importance than an event with a low likelihood and a low impact. 2 different types of risk analysis: quantitative risk analysis and qualitative risk analysis. Quantitative risk analysis. A quantitative risk analysis assigns monetary and numeric values. Exposure factor, F, is the percent value or functionality of an asset that will be lost when a threat event occurs. Single loss expectancy, SLE, is the monetary impact of each threat occurrence. To determine the SLE, you must know the asset value, AV, and the exposure factor, F. SLE equals AV times F. Annualized rate of occurrence, ARO, is the estimate of how often a given threat might occur annually. ALE is the expected risk factor of an annual threat event. To determine the ALE, you must know the SLE and the annualized rate of occurrence, ARO. The calculation for the ALE is ALE equals SLE times ARO. Qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis does not assign monetary and numeric values. Qualitative risk analysis techniques are brainstorming, Delphi technique, storyboarding, focus groups, surveys, questionnaires, checklists, one-on-one meetings, interviews. Some hybrid risk analysis use of both quantitative and qualitative risk analyses. Risk management concepts. You live in a grim universe. That's risk management for you. Max Gladstone, Two Serpents Rise. Countermeasure selection. A security countermeasure should be cost-effective and should be decided based on some cost-benefit analysis. A commonly used cost-benefit calculation for a given safeguard is ALE before countermeasure ALE after countermeasure. Cost of countermeasure equals value of countermeasure to the organization. Implementation. Before implementing any controls, security professionals must consider the frameworks used for reference, tools deployed, and metrics for managing the controls. The goal of countermeasure implementation is to improve the organization's security without negatively impacting performance. Inherent risk is the risk that an organization decides not to implement any safeguards. Residual risk is risk that is left over after safeguards have been implemented. Residual risk equals inherent risk. Countermeasures. Risk response. Four methods are used to handle risk: risk avoidance, risk transfer, risk mitigation, risk acceptance. Risk avoidance is terminating the activity that causes a risk. Risk transfer is passing the risk on to a third party, including insurance companies. Risk mitigation is defining the acceptable risk level the organization can tolerate, and reducing the risk to that level. Risk acceptance, accepting the risk. Access control categories. Access control divided into 7 categories: compensative, corrective, detective, deterrent, directive, preventive, recovery. Compensative controls is an additional security control put in place to compensate for weaknesses in other controls. Examples of compensative controls include requiring 2 authorized signatures to release sensitive or confidential information and requiring 2 keys owned by different personnel to open a safety deposit box. Corrective controls work by correcting a damaged system or process. Examples of corrective controls include installing antivirus. Detective controls are controls that alert during or after a successful attack. Examples of detective controls: closed-circuit television cameras, CCTV. Deterrent controls deter users from performing actions on a system. Examples of deterrent controls is fences. Directive controls are in place to formalize an organization's security directive mainly to its employees. Directive control is an acceptable use policy, AUP. Preventive controls used to prevent errors, unwanted events, and unauthorized actions. Examples of preventive controls is locks. Recovery controls recover a system or device after an attack. Examples of recovery control is data backup. Access control types. 3 types of access controls are administrative, management, controls. Logical, technical, controls. Physical controls. Administrative controls are implemented by creating and following organizational policy, procedure, or regulation. For example, user training and awareness. Logical or technical controls are software or hardware components used to restrict access. Specific examples of logical controls are firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, encryption. Physical controls are implemented with physical devices, for example security guards. Risk management concepts. Not taking risks one doesn't understand is often the best form of risk management. Raghuram G. Rajan, Fault Lines, How Hidden Fractures Still Threaten the World Economy. A security control assessment, SCA, is the evaluation of security infrastructure against a baseline. For example, penetration test or vulnerability assessment. Security controls should be monitored and review all logs. Security controls should provide benefits that can be monitored and measured. Assets valuation depends on purchase cost, development cost, administrative cost, maintenance cost, cost in acquiring, cost to protect, value to owners and users, value to competitors, intellectual property value, market valuation, replacement cost, productivity, operational costs, liability of asset loss. Risk reporting are the production of a risk report and a presentation of that report to the relevant parties. 4 key stages of the Deming cycle are plan, do, check, act. Plan: identify objectives and processes to deliver results and meet business needs. Do: implement processes. Check: monitor and measure. Act: continually improve performance. Risk assessment frameworks are methodologies identify and assess risk in an organization. Factor analysis of information risk, FAIR, is a proprietary framework for understanding, analyzing, and measuring information risk. OpenFAIR is an open source version of FAIR. Operationally critical threat, asset, and vulnerability evaluation. Octave is developed by the CERT Coordination Center. A risk framework is a set of linked processes and records work together to identify and manage risk in an organization. Create strategies and policies. Establish risk tolerance. Categorize systems and information. Select a baseline set of security controls. Implement security controls. Assess security controls for effectiveness. Authorize system operation. Monitor security controls. NIST SP 837, Guide for Applying the Risk Management Framework to Federal Information Systems. ISO/IEC 27005, Information Security Risk Management. COBIT 5 from ISACA. Enterprise Risk Management Integrated Framework from COSO. Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission. Threat Modeling Methodologies. Threat modeling methodologies are STRIDE, PASTA, TRIKE, VAST, and NIST SP 800-154. The STRIDE model was developed by Microsoft in order to help security engineers understand and classify all possible threats on a server. STRIDE covers spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, escalation of privileges. Spoofing identity, where one user takes on the identity of another. For example, an attacker takes on the identity of an administrator. Tampering with data, where information in the system is changed by an attacker. For example, an attacker changes an account balance. Repudiation, where an attacker deletes or changes a transaction or login information in an attempt to refute that they ever took place. For example, deleting a purchase transaction so the item isn't charged to you. Information disclosure, where sensitive information is stolen and sold for profit. For example, information on the latest widget is stolen and offered to a competitor for profit. Denial of service, where the resources of a system are overwhelmed and processing stops for everyone. Elevation of privilege, similar to spoofing, but instead of taking on the ID of another, they elevate their own security level to an administrator. Process for attack simulation and threat analysis, PASTA, methodology. Provides a 7-step process for analyzing applications to align business objectives and technical requirements. Business objectives definition. Technical scope definition. Application decomposition. Threat analysis. Vulnerability detection. Attack enumeration. Risk and impact analysis. TRIKE is an open-source threat modeling methodology and tool. The project began in 2006 as an attempt to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of existing threat modeling methodologies, and is being actively used and developed. The Visual, Agile, and Simple Threat Modeling, VAST, methodology was conceived after reviewing the shortcomings and implementation challenges inherent in the other threat modeling methodologies. NIST SP 800-154 is a draft publication for data-centric system threat modeling. Identify and characterize the system and data of interest. Identify and select the attack vectors in the model. Characterize the security controls for mitigating the attack vectors. Analyze the threat model. 3 general approaches to threat modeling: attacker-centric, asset-centric, system-centric. Attacker-centric threat models start with identifying an attacker, and then evaluates the attacker's goals and potential techniques. Asset-centric threat models begin by identifying asset value and motivation of threat agents. System-centric threat models focus on system design and potential attacks against each component. Apply risk-based management concepts to the supply chain. A supply chain is a sequence of suppliers involved in delivering some product. A company manufactures laptops, supply chain will include the vendor that supplies CPU, memory, drive controllers, hard drives, SSDs, and video cards. A secure supply chain is all vendors in the chain are reliable, trustworthy, reputable organizations are practices security requirements. The goal of a secure supply chain is to ensure quality, performance and operational goals, and provide security mechanisms. Risks associated with hardware, software, and services. One of the major supply chain risks is hardware trojans. Hardware trojans are a well-known problem when buying hardware such as KVM switch, keyboard, mouse, network cards, network equipment, especially from non-reputable sources that have placed hardware trojans to leak keyboard passwords, or provide remote unauthorized entry. Third-party software can be Trojan in supply chain. Outsourcing services is the practice of having certain job functions done outside a company instead of having an in-house department or employee handle them. Functions can be outsourced to either a company or an individual. Organization should review service providers' security program to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should conduct on-site inspection and interviews to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should review contracts to ensure security and protection levels to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should ensure service level agreements to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should review internal and external audit reports and third-party reviews to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should review references and communicate with customers to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should ensure service provider has a business continuity plan, BCP, to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should implement a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, to reduce risk in outsourcing. Organization should understand service providers' legal and regulatory requirements to reduce risk in outsourcing. Third-party assessment and monitoring. A third party ensures that an organization complies with industry or governmental standards and regulations. Third-party assessment analysis perform an on-site assessment, a document exchange, a process policy review. On-site assessment involves a team from the third party. This assessment are observing employees as they perform their day-to-day duties, reviewing records, reviewing documentation, and other tasks. A document exchange review involves transmitting a set of documents to the third party. A process policy review focuses on a single process or policy within the organization and ensures that the process or policy follows regulations. Minimum security requirements. Document the minimum level of security that a provider must maintain. The minimum security requirements are documented in a service level agreement. A service level agreement, SLA, is a contractual agreement that a service provider guarantees a certain level of service. For example, an Internet service provider, ISP, may sign an SLA of 99.999% uptime to the Internet. Service level requirements is an input for service level agreement and contains the requirements of the IT service. Service level requirements are: description of service, hours of service, service interruption, availability requirements, maintenance requirements, allowed downtime, workload expected, performance expected. NIST IR 7622 Notional Supply Chain Risk Management Practices for Federal Information Systems. ISO 28000:2007 is specification for security management systems for the supply chain. Security Awareness, Education, and Training Program. Information Security Awareness Program gives basic security information so that everyone in organization understands the importance of security. Information Security Awareness Programs on the Corporate Security Policy. Information Security Awareness Programs on the Organization's Security Program. Information security awareness programs on the regulatory compliance requirements. Information security awareness programs on the social engineering. Information security awareness programs on the business continuity. Information security awareness programs on the disaster recovery. Information security awareness programs on the emergency management. Information security awareness programs on the security incident response. Information security awareness programs on the data classification, information labeling and handling. Information security awareness programs on the personnel security, safety. Information security awareness programs on the physical security. Information security awareness programs on the appropriate computing resource use. Information security awareness programs on the security credentials, such as passwords. Information security awareness programs on the risk assessment. Information security awareness programs on the accidents and errors. Security training programs gives more in-depth information than an awareness program and focus on specific security. Classroom training is instructor-led training at corporate headquarters or a company training facility. Self-paced training is web-based training. Job training assists personnel development of their skill sets relative to performance of security. Technical or vendor training is training on a specific product or technology provided by a third party. Qualification programs is qualification standards that must be completed within a specified time. An education program gives the highest level of security training. Continuing education requirements are a required minimum amount of education that license holders must complete to renew their licenses, certifications such as the CISSP or Certified Information Systems Auditor, CISSP. Certificate programs are colleges and universities offer education programs about current and relevant subjects for working professionals. Formal education degree, companies offer scholarships for employees enrolled in classes that are relevant to their profession. Periodic content reviews. Security threats is quickly changing. Security education, training, and awareness programs must be reviewed and updated. Security education and training programs examined at least once per year. Program effectiveness evaluation. It is important for the organization to track performance for security evaluation. Periodic quizzes to keep staff up to date and retain security awareness knowledge. Training metrics is helpful to track completion rates. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? T.S. Eliot. Asset are computing devices, IT systems, software, virtual computing, and hardware. Asset security concepts are related to data policy, governance, quality, documentation, and organization. Data policy. A data policy is a documented set of guidelines for ensuring the proper management of an organization's digital information. Data policy should guide the organization to collect only the required information. Data policy should guide how to keep information in safe. Data policy should guide to securely destroy information when it is no longer needed. Data policy should be flexible and responsive to change. Data policy must be aligned with law and regulatory requirements. Data policy provides standards, quality, format, access, and retention of data. Data governance. Data governance is the practice of identifying important data, ensuring high quality, and improving value to the business. Data governance manage creation, transformation, and usage of data. Concept of data governance are people, processes, and IT. People are first step in implementing a data governance program is to build a team and define responsibilities. Processes must be developed. Information technology help business, monitoring, and reporting software, and data quality solutions. Data governance guiding principles are: establish responsibilities. Plan to best support the organization. Acquire validly. Ensure performance when required. Ensure conformance with rules. Ensure respect for human factors. Data governance model establishes authority and management and decision-making. The function of data governance should be under Data Governance Office or Committee. ISO/IEC 38500:2015 Information Technology Governance of IT for the organization. Provides guiding principles for members of governing bodies of organizations. Data Governance Committee purpose is to establish and development of common data definitions, standards, requirements, and processes. Data Governance Committee should have the authority to enforce policies and procedures. Governing body manages implementation and integration of data governance principles into business processes. Goal of data governance is stop data-related problems before begin. Data governance policies and procedures reduce ambiguity, establish clear accountabilities, and disseminate data-related information to all stakeholders. Data quality. Data quality is a perception or an assessment of data's fitness to serve its purpose in a given context. The quality of data is determined by factors such as accuracy, completeness, reliability, relevance, and how up-to-date it is. Quality assurance, QA, is use of prescribed standards to assess and to discover inconsistencies and other anomalies in the data and apply data cleansing to deliver a final product. Quality assurance, QA, is the data fit for the purpose. Quality control, QC, is an assessment of data quality based on internal standards, processes, and procedures to control and monitor quality as informed by quality assurance. Quality control, QC, is the data fit for use. The purpose of performing QA and QC in data quality procedures is to reduce errors. Errors of commission is data entry mistakes or inaccurate transcription that should be reduced by having a sufficient QA process. Errors of omission is harder to detect. These are missing data that can lead to inaccurate values. Data quality principles are relevant at all stages of data management, capture, digitization, storage, analysis, presentation, and use. Data documentation. Data documentation is useful to manage the large data. Data documentation helps to users will understand and use data efficiently. Data documentation helps organizations ensure that data will be usable into the future. Components of data documentation are how data was created, context for data, structure of data and contents, and manipulations to the data. Objectives of data documentation are longevity and reuse of data. Understand content, context, and limits of data. Easier discovery of data. Data interoperability and exchange. Metadata. Metadata is descriptive information about the data set. Metadata describing the context, content, and structure. Metadata are name, title, subjects, keywords, description, date of creation, geolocation, and relevant information. Metadata are business rules, policies, and mandates. Metadata are agents related to the record. Metadata are business activities and processes. Metadata are information about records management processes. Metadata ensures authenticity, reliability, usability, and integrity. README file. README file used primarily for application or programming files. README file in .text or .pdf format helps. Metadata description. README file describe multiple files in the directory if applicable. The README file explain the who, what, why, and other contextual information is helpful to an external user of the data. README file contain directions for file handling, processing steps, field abbreviations, and data definitions. File contents. File name should be something unique, consistent, informative, and easily sortable. Project names or author names is encouraged. while the use of special characters is not, except for dashes, underscores, and numbers. Users must understand the content of the file. Different types of files have different methods to store the file content information. Programming code may contain this information in the header area at the top of the file. In Office automation files, in the Properties area where author, file name, last accessed, and last printed fields are documented. Data organization. The process organizations used to arrange and control data is called data organization. Data organization components are data classification, categorization, structure, and schema. Data organization applies to structured and unstructured data. A data structure is important to enable access and modify data efficiently. Data structure is used to organize and store data. A data structure is a collection of data, relationships, functions, or operations. A record, also called tuple, is an aggregate data structure. Record is a data set containing other values, typically in fixed number and sequence and typically indexed by name. A record is a collection of fields, possibly of different data types, typically in fixed number and sequence. The fields of a record may also be called members. Unstructured data is information that either does not have a predefined data model or is not organized in a predefined manner. Unstructured data is a simple text document where names, dates, and other pieces of information are scattered throughout random paragraphs. Data schema. Data schema is a blueprint of how a database is constructed. In a relational database, the data schema is organized into tables. A database generally stores its schema in a reference repository called a data dictionary. Data classification. Data classification is based on the level of sensitivity of the organization. Data classification helps to determine the security controls to be used to manage and safeguard the data against unauthorized access, improper retention, and unsafe destruction. Commercial organizations' classification are confidential, sensitive, private, proprietary, public. Confidential is highest level of classification. The loss or theft of this data can cause serious risk to the organization. Sensitive is less than confidential but important to protect. Losing this data will raise the risk to the organization. Strategy documents or inter-organizational correspondence can be considered sensitive. Private is usually compartmental data that might not do the company damage but must be kept private for other reasons. Employee retention statistics or salary ranges are often classified as private. Proprietary data is disclosed outside the company on a limited basis or contains information that could reduce the company's competitive advantage, such as the technical specifications of a new product. Public data, if lost, would have little or no impact on risk levels. Data categorization. Categorization can start with a high, medium, and low categories. Federal Information Processing Standard (FIPS), Publication 199 outlines guidelines for applying the qualitative categories. Over-securing data is a waste of resources. Under-securing data presents risk. Identify and classify information and assets. Identifying and classifying information assets, first step in establishing a information security. Without identifying and classifying information assets, we will not be able to know where assets are. Without identifying and classifying information assets, we will not be able to know which assets are more valuable. Without identifying and classifying information assets, information security plan will be inefficient, costly. International law, regulation and standards about asset and information classification. Canada, the Security of Information Act is an act of the Parliament of Canada that addresses national security. China, Guarding state secrets. United Kingdom, the Official Secrets Acts 1911 to 1989 provide the main legal protection in the UK against espionage and the unauthorized disclosure of information. United States, NIST Federal Information Processing Standard 199, Standards for Security Categorization of Federal Information and Information Systems. United States, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Special Publication, SP, 800-60 has been developed to assist federal government agencies to categorize information and information systems. United States, Committee on National Security Systems, CNSS, Instruction Number 1253, Security Categorization and Control Selection for National Security Systems. European Union, EU General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Asset classification. Asset classification begins with inventory of assets and determining the responsible persons, or owners. Asset are computing devices, IT systems, software, virtual computing, and hardware. Paper-based records are also assets. Records or documentation can be classified based on sensitivity and value. Classifying the assets means categorizing and grouping assets by the level of sensitivity. Levels of classification dictate a minimum set of security controls. Data policy is the primary mechanism. Establishes classification levels. Benefits of classification. Make an accurate asset inventory. Gain insight into the environment. Optimize change, vulnerability, and patch. Management programs. Determine the best maintenance windows. Improve security controls and segmentation. Tailor protection of sensitive data. Identify rogue assets. Understand potential risks posed by vulnerabilities. Identify proprietary assets and intellectual property. Forecast costs of protection. Compliance. Regulatory controls. Qualitative versus quantitative asset value analysis. Quantitative methodology are measurement and numerical value. Value is presented in currency, percentages, and numbers. Advantages of quantitative analysis. Objective and uses real numbers for comparison. Credible, meaningful, and easily understood. Aligned with financial considerations and cost-benefit analysis. Disadvantages of quantitative analysis. Complex and intensive to calculate. May provide a false sense of accuracy. Measures and formulas can be miscalculated. Qualitative methodology are based on subjective judgment. Qualitative assessments are in terms like high, medium, and low. Advantages of qualitative analysis. Simple to measure and explain. Identify the problem. Disadvantages of qualitative analysis. Dependent on the experience and judgment. Assets can be over or under assessed. Recommendations are subjective. Hard to track progress. Asset classification levels. Assets should be identified and controlled based on sensitivity. Examples of asset classifications are Tier 0, Tier 1, Tier 2, and significant. Systems. Tier 0 asset classifications. Tier 0 asset classifications are essential to business units. Tier 0 asset classifications handle extremely sensitive data. Tier 0 asset classifications compromise could have a critical impact on the business. Tier 0 asset classifications required to be available 100%. Tier 0 asset classifications examples. Domain controllers. Databases. Email servers. File shares. Client web servers. Gateway network devices, firewalls. Routers, and network critical. Infrastructure. Shuts down business for a day if it breaks or turns off. Tier 1 asset classifications. Tier 1 asset classifications important but not necessarily critical. Tier 1 asset classifications are essential to specific departments but not to the entire business. Tier 1 asset classifications compromise would have a moderate impact on the business. Tier 1 asset classifications examples. Development environments with critical data. Redundant backup systems with critical data. Department file shares. Local network devices, switches, routers, firewalls, and segmentation devices. Tier 2 asset classifications. Tier 2 asset classifications are neither essential nor critical. Tier 2 asset classifications are used by few people or single individual. Tier 2 asset classifications inconvenience few people, but would not be a major disruption to business. Tier 2 asset classifications examples. Workstations, laptops, mobile phones and tablets, printers, desk phones. Significant. Systems asset classifications. Significant. Systems asset classifications handle data subject to compliance standards. Significant. Systems asset classifications fall into more than one category or stand alone. Significant. Systems asset classifications examples. Cardholder data, CHD, system that stores, processes, or transmits CHD must align to PCI DSS. Protected health information, PHI. Medical data must be protected per the standards outlined in the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Financial data fall under certain privacy requirements outlined in the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA. Classified government data for U.S. military and government. Determine and maintain information and asset ownership. Asset ownership is central to information security. Asset management life cycle. Asset life cycle are strategy, plan, design, procure, operate, maintain, modify and dispose. Asset management process reduce costs. Asset management process improve services. Asset management process mitigate risk. Asset management system activities are formal assignment of ownership, IT asset management, ITAM, change management, and configuration management. Formal assignment of ownership. Chief Executive Officer or authorized delegates have formal ownership responsibility. Responsibility are for the protection and security of the information asset. Asset owners are keeping the information asset inventory up to date. Asset owners are identifying classification of asset. Asset owners defining and implementing appropriate safeguards to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of asset. Asset owners assessing and monitoring safeguards to ensure compliance. Asset owners authorizing access for those who have a business need. Asset owners ensuring that access is removed from those who no longer have a business need. Information Technology Asset Management. Information Technology Asset Management. ITAM is to provide accountability for the organization. Information Technology Asset Management drawn from ISO/IEC 19770. Information Technology Asset Management. ITAM are life cycle view of assets as well as financial concerns for inventory. ISO/IEC 19770 is the data standard for software identification, SWID, tags. SWID tags provide authoritative identifying information for installed software or other licensable items. Accurate and current listing of hardware and software assets with classification and categorization. When assets are no longer needed by the organization, ITAM guides and supports asset disposition. Change management. Organizations must develop policies and procedures to prevent unexpected modifications to the inventory of hardware and software. Change management prioritizes changes in a controlled manner that does not negatively impact the production environment customer expectations. A change is an event that is approved by management, is implemented after mitigating risks to an acceptable level. Configuration management. Configuration management, keeping inventory current. Changes in configurations for systems and software must be controlled and documented. Configurations without direction can lead to problems in security. Organizations use guides or checklists to accomplish and maintain a secure baseline configuration. National Checklist Program, NCP, is the U.S. government repository for up-to-date and detailed guidance for security configurations. Organizations automate baseline security configurations through the metadata available in the National Checklist Program, NCP, and using the Security Content Automation Protocol, SCAP. Security Content Automation Protocol, SCAP, enables validated security products to automatically perform configuration checking using NCP checklists. Software Asset Management. Software Asset Management, SAM, is a key part of continuous monitoring. Software Asset Management, SAM, is to support the automation of security functions. Software Asset Management, SAM, includes vulnerability scanning and application patching for operating systems, third-party applications, and firmware. Software Asset Management, SAM, consists of inventory of applications. Software Asset Management, SAM, consists of current list of known vulnerabilities. Software Asset Management, SAM, consists of each application patch level. Software Asset Management, SAM, consists of actions to patch or apply alternative or compensating controls. Software Asset Management, SAM can reduce serious disruptive and damaging events, such as ransomware, denial of service, or unauthorized access to systems. Software licensing. A software license is a document that provides legally binding guidelines for the use and distribution of software. Original copies of licensed software must be controlled to prevent copyright violation. Software licensing inventory managed by manual like spreadsheets or automated. Software must be legally licensed before installed. If software is used without a license and discovered during audit, there can be legal results. Unlicensed software use will cause unanticipated increases in software costs. Software copies should be managed by a software or media librarian. Software licenses should be protected with technical and physical controls. Periodic scans should be run to find and remediate unauthorized and unlicensed software. Without licensing, manufacturers not providing upgrades and updates. Controls for tracking software used to prevent unauthorized copying and distribution. Software licensing models. Commonly used software licensing models are End-User License Agreement, EULA, Site Software License, Subscription Software License, Perpetual Software License, Consumptive Software License. End-User License Agreement, EULA, is used for all of the paid-for software and is a legal contract between a software application author or publisher and the user. Site software license is a method to obtain multiple end-user licenses at one cost. Subscription-based software license is billed each month or annum regardless of use. This model is also known as a software as a service, SaaS, license. Subscription-based per-user licenses generally include the license, technical support, software maintenance, and hosting of the software. Perpetual software licenses are common for self-hosted and on-premise installations of enterprise software. Perpetual software licenses are often used in enterprise-level software packages where a company will pay for a large amount of licenses up front. This is generally the most expensive software licensing model upfront, but tends to be a cost-value investment for large organizations who need multiple licenses. Consumptive software license model, customers pay relative to their usage of the software. This can make costs scalable for small businesses who need to use expensive software. This is also suitable for businesses who have needs that fluctuate over time. Open source software is not necessarily free of licensing. Freeware is a special type of licensing category that requires no purchase, but the source code and copyrights are retained by the developer. Software library. A software library is a collection of software owned by a single company. Software library is a repository of data and programming code used to develop programs and applications. Software library is the approved product list, APL, that organization maintains. Software is tested and approved for use. Monitoring and reporting. How often are hosts checked for missing updates? How often are asset inventories for host applications updated? What percentage of software in the environment is not on approved product list, APL? Network Access Control, NAC, is a security asset control process that brings antivirus, host intrusion prevention, and vulnerability scanning to network access and authorization controls. Protect privacy. Privacy is the right of an individual to control his own information. Asset privacy, ensuring that organizational assets have the level of privacy that is needed. Today, individual privacy is a growing worldwide concern. Laws for the protection of privacy have been adopted worldwide. International legal standards on privacy are European Union, Safe Harbor, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Cross-Border Privacy Rules, U.S. Data Privacy Laws and Guidelines, the Privacy Act of 1974, U.S., Fair Information Practice Principles, Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, Canada. European Union. European Union, EU, published Articles and Principles for Data Protection in 1995. Objective of the Data Directive, Directive 95/46/CC, was protection of processing of personal data and the limitation of movement. General principle of the directive was personal data should not be processed at all, except when certain conditions are met. These conditions fall into three categories: transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality. European Union EU directive is directly attached to privacy and human rights law. Each member of the EU implemented Directive 95/46/CC differently. For these reasons, EU General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, was created and adopted in April 2016. Data Directive be replaced, and GDPR became enforceable on May 25, 2018. GDPR reformed the Data Directive to strengthen online privacy rights in worldwide. A single set of rules on data protection, valid across the EU. Strengthening individuals' rights so that the collection and use of personal data is limited to the minimum necessary. Rights to data portability to more easily transfer personal data from one service provider to another. The right to be forgotten is explicitly recognized. EU rules continue to apply to organizations outside the EU that handle the data of EU citizens, but it has clarified and strengthened data breach notification requirements. EU enforcement is increased, with between 2% and 4% of a business organization's annual revenue at risk of fines and penalties for data protection. More effective enforcement of the rules in that police involvement and criminal prosecution are tied to violations of privacy rules. Under the Data Directive, global companies could achieve safe harbor status. EU could determine that a foreign organization had sufficient data protection policy and procedures. The organization voluntarily demonstrated an ability to be compliant with the directive. U.S. Department of Commerce oversaw the list and required registrants to renew annually. Under GDPR, companies have to attest and demonstrate that they meet the high standards of the new guidance. If the EU evaluates that a company's standards and procedures are sufficient, the company could be placed on a list known as the Privacy Shield list. Safe Harbor Privacy Principles. International safe harbor privacy principles were developed between 1998 and 2000 to provide a level of assurance that the privacy controls of U.S. organizations were adequate to protect EU citizen data, per EU Data Directive standards. Safe harbor provisions allowed self-certification by U.S. companies. U.S. Department of Commerce developed privacy frameworks to guide compliance and oversaw the program for U.S. interests. U.S. control frameworks were deemed adequate in 2000. 2015 European Commission ruled that a new framework for transatlantic data flows was needed. This action was in response to the U.S. repeatedly failing to follow the directive. EU determined that a stricter model was necessary. The prevailing safe harbor agreement was ruled invalid. 2016, European Commission and the United States launched a new framework for transatlantic data flows. This new arrangement is called the EU-US Privacy Shield and replaces the International Safe Harbor Agreement. To enable the transfer of personal data from EU citizens to US commercial organizations. The agreement makes data transfer easier while giving data subjects the privacy protection they expect from their own nations. EU-US Privacy Shield designation is specific to the United States. There are a few countries that EU considers to have adequate data protection levels, and data transfers are permitted. Countries that are cleared include Argentina, Canada, Israel, New Zealand, Switzerland, and Uruguay. Countries that are not approved for data protection is achieved by the use of standard contract agreements with EU data controllers to meet EU requirements. Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Cross-Border Privacy Rules. Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Cross-Border Privacy Rules was developed by APEC. 5 participating APEC CBPR countries are United States, Mexico, Japan, Canada, and the Republic of Korea. Businesses adopt data privacy policies outlined in the APEC CBPR system. An independent APEC CBPR accountability assesses participating businesses for ongoing compliance. Agents' assessments are enforceable by law. U.S. data privacy laws and guidelines. A typical category of sensitive data is PII. PII is any information that can be used identifying, locating, or contacting any specific individual. U.S. privacy regulations are Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, Privacy Act, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. Examples of PII are name, personal identification number, address information, asset information, telephone numbers. Privacy Act of 1974, U.S. Privacy Act of 1974, U.S. play a foundational role in protecting individual privacy with respect to information collected, used, and stored by the U.S. government. Privacy Act led to privacy laws and regulations both in the government and in private sector organizations. HIPAA protects privacy and security of information in healthcare. FCRA Federal Trade Commission to promote the accuracy, integrity, fairness, and privacy of consumer information. Privacy Act protects creation, use, and maintenance of personal identifiers. Organizations must provide disclosures to individuals how information has been shared. Privacy Act does not allow disclosure of sensitive information unless it is under limited permissible uses. Fair Information Practice Principles. Fair Information Practice Principles, FIPS, are guidelines by the U.S. FTC. The Code of Fair Information Practices is based on 5 principles. Notice/awareness. The most fundamental principle is notice. Consumers should be given notice before any personal information is collected from them. Choice/consent. The second widely accepted core principle of fair information practice is consumer choice or consent. Choice means giving consumers options as to how any personal information collected from them may be used. Access/participation. Access is the third core principle. It refers to an individual's ability both to access data about him or herself. Integrity/security. The fourth widely accepted principle is that data be accurate and secure. Enforcement. It is generally agreed that core principles of privacy protection can only be effective if there is a mechanism in place to enforce them. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, Canada. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, Canada, applies to all private sector organizations in Canada. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act does not apply to government agencies or organizations that do not engage in commercial activities. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act sets ground rules for how businesses handle personal information in commercial activity. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act contains 10 principles are accountability, identifying purposes, consent, limiting collection, limiting use, disclosure and retention, accuracy, safeguards, openness, individual access and challenging compliance. Accountability. An organization is responsible for personal information under its control. Identifying purposes. The purposes for which the personal information is being collected must be identified by the organization before or at the time of collection. Consent. Knowledge and consent of the individual are required for the collection, use, or disclosure of personal information, except where inappropriate. Limiting collection. Collection of personal information must be limited to that which is needed for the purposes identified by the organization. Limiting use, disclosure, and retention, unless the individual consents otherwise required by law. Personal information can only be used or disclosed for the purposes for which it was collected. Safeguards. Personal information must be protected by appropriate security relative to the sensitivity of the information. Openness. An organization must make detailed information about its policies and practices relating to the management of personal information publicly available. Individual access. Upon request, an individual must be informed of the existence, use, and disclosure of their personal information and be given access to that information. Challenging compliance. An individual shall be able to challenge an organization's compliance with the previous principles. An exception to PIPTA is information collected, used, or stored for the purpose of journalism, art, or literary material. Data ownership. Privacy and data protection start with clear roles and responsibilities for the assets. People within organization manage, handle, and use data, have different requirements based on their roles. Different documentation refers to these roles a little differently. Owners have a primary responsibility of protecting data and assets. Assets and data security roles are data owners, data controllers, data processors, data stewards, and data custodians. Data owners. Data owner is responsible for ensuring that specific data is protected. Data owners determine data sensitivity labels and the frequency of data backup. Data owners focus on the data. Data owner performs management duties. Data controllers. Data controllers create and manage sensitive data. Human resources employees are often data controllers. Human resources create and manage sensitive data, such as salary. Data processors. Data processors manage data on behalf of data controllers. An outsourced payroll company is an example of a data processor. Outsourced payroll company manage payroll data on behalf of a data controller, such as an HR department. Data stewards. Finance, human resources, sales, or IT, assign people who are responsible for the formation and execution of policies for the management of data and metadata. Data stewards play an important role in the data governance process as subject matter experts on categorization data, definitions for use, and implementing the data governance policies. Data stewards manage data quality requirements to ensure fitness of data. Fitness of data are ability to use data for its intended purpose in a format that is readable. Data stewards establish internal and external data access requirements. Data custodians. A custodian provides hands-on protection of assets. Data custodians perform data backups and restoration, patch systems, configure antivirus software, etc. Data custodians follow orders. Data owner has ultimate responsibility for security of the data. Data custodian is responsible for the day-to-day security administration. Data remanence. Data remanence is residual data that remains when the data is not completely erased or destroyed. Residual data can remain on media if not disposed properly, and recovery of that data by unauthorized viewers is possible. Data remanence can result disclosure of sensitive information. Countermeasures against data remanence, ensuring that data is properly removed. Data remanence countermeasures are clearing, purging, destruction, clearing. Clearing, removing data from media so that data cannot be reconstructed using normal file recovery techniques and tools. Data is only recoverable using special forensic techniques. Overwriting is a clearing technique, writes data patterns over entire media, eliminating any trace. Another clearing technique is disk wiping. For example, before a hard drive is reused within an organization, its contents may be cleared to prevent their accidental disclosure to the next user. Purging. Purging or sanitization makes data unreadable even with advanced forensic techniques. Data should be unrecoverable. Degaussing is a purging technique. Degaussing exposes media to a powerful alternating magnetic field, removing any previously written data and leaving the media in a magnetically randomized state. Destruction. Destruction involves destroying the media on which data resides. Destruction is the physical act of destroying media that it cannot be reconstructed. Methods of destruction are shredding, pulverizing, pulping, incinerates. Shredding involves physically breaking media to pieces. Pulverizing involves reducing media to dust. Pulping chemically alters the media. Finally, burning incinerates the media. Destruction is the most secure method of preventing retrieval. Specific data remanence methods are zeroing, degaussing, overwriting, encryption, physical destruction. Zeroing. Zeroing erases data on the disk and overwrites it with all zeros. Degaussing. Degaussing is a process whereby magnetic media is erased. Overwriting. Overwriting are data written to storage locations that previously held sensitive data. Overwriting use random 0 and 1 combinations, not patterns, to overwrite. Encryption. Encryption is that data is stored on the medium in encrypted format using a strong key. To render data unrecoverable, system simply needs to securely delete the encryption key, which is many times faster than deleting the physical destruction. Physical destruction is the best way to combat data remanence, to simply destroy physical media. U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, Central Security Service, CSS, Policy. Manual 9-12. Magnetic storage devices. Physically damage hard disk drive by deforming internal platters or using a hard disk drive crusher. Optical storage devices. Optical storage devices are CD, DVD, and Blu-ray disc. Blu-ray discs BDS can be sanitized is by incinerating the material and reducing it to ash. Incineration also works for CDs and DVDs. CDs and DVDs can be break up into small parts. CDs and DVDs can be shredded. CDs can be sanitized by approved grinders. DVDs or Blu-ray discs BDS cannot be sanitized by grinding. Solid-state storage devices. Solid-state storage devices break up into particles that are nominally 2 mm edge length in size using an approved disintegrator. Solid-state storage incinerate material to ash. Security professionals should involved in negotiating contract with cloud-based provider to ensure that contract covers data remnants issues. Encryption is ensure that data remnants is not a concern with cloud service. Collection limitation. Collection limitation is that a data collector should collect only the information that is necessary for the purpose. Organizations should collect minimum amount of sensitive information that is required. Collection of data is limited based on laws and regulations. Data subjects must have knowledge about the data being collected. Data collector should collect only the information that is necessary for the purpose. Data should be collected by lawful and fair means. Data should be collected with the knowledge of the subject. Personal data collected should be relevant for the purposes. Collected data to be accurate and kept up to date. Personal data should not be disclosed to other parties without the consent of the subject. Personal data should not be used for other purposes than for what it was collected. Personal data should be safeguarded against intentional or inadvertent access, use, disclosure, destruction, and modification. Data elements to be collected should be constantly evaluated by the organization to make sure collection is limited to only relevant data. Collected data is maintained for as long as the data supports a legitimate business need. Working with minimum necessary volumes of data helps the organization efficiently keep data accurate and up to date. Ensure appropriate asset retention. Asset retention requirements based on several factors are asset type, asset age, legal and regulatory requirements. Considerations must be made to establish which types of information should be maintained and for how long. Regulations establish guidelines based on the category or sensitivity of the data. HIPAA requires healthcare organizations in the United States to maintain records for 6 years from the date of creation. PCI-DSS provides standards that handle credit card transactions. Organizations should limit cardholder data storage and retention time to that required for business, legal, and/or regulatory purposes. European Union law requiring data retention of Internet and telecommunication use by private citizens for a specified period of time. Data must be destroyed when it no longer meets the prerequisites for collection and storage. ISO 15489-1:2016, Information and Documentation Records Management. Part 1, Concepts and Principles defines the creation, capture and management of records. Department of Defense, DOD, Instruction 5015.02, DOD Records Management Program. Data Retention Policy Guidelines. Document purpose of the policy. Identify who is affected by the policy. Identify types of data and systems by the policy. Define key terms, especially legal and technical terminology. Describe detail requirements from legal, business, and personal perspectives. Outline the procedures for ensuring data is properly retained. Document exception process. List responsibilities of those involved in data retention activities. Build a table showing the information type and its corresponding retention period. Document the specific duties of data retention team. Retention of records. Records contain data that is a valuable asset to a business. Record have to be assessed and evaluated against the rights of the individual. Organization understands different record retention requirements. Record retention requirements are documented in a schedule. Records are maintained according to the schedule and not longer. Excessive retention increases risk of data exposure. Organization should have a periodic review of retained records. ISO/IEC 17799:2005. Information Technology Security Techniques Code of Practice for Information Security Management provide guidance on information handling and retention requirements over the life cycle. NIST Special Publication 800-53 Revision 4 Security and Privacy Controls for Federal Information Systems and Organizations provide guidance on information handling and retention requirements over the life cycle. Determining appropriate records retention. Just having information can be a liability. Data retention applies equally to the minimum and maximum period of time. Retaining data longer than necessary increases an organization's liability. Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI-DSS, requires that credit card data be retained for as short period of time as possible. Record retention schedule can include a date when personal data is no longer needed. Personal data is not retained any longer than is necessary. Retention of records in data life cycle. Retention of records in the life cycle of data is increasingly significant. Locating and protecting information in the numerous record storage areas for the organization is a challenge. Information security professional design and implement a records management program to identify, maintain, and dispose of records in a safe, timely, and cost-effective manner. Hierarchical storage management, HSM, is effective record storage technique to support a secure life cycle management process. Hierarchical storage management, HSM, automatically moves data between high-cost and low-cost storage media. High-speed storage devices like solid-state drive cost more than the slower storage hard disk drives, optical disks, and magnetic tape drives. High-speed storage is appropriate for frequent retrieval of records. Bulk of enterprise records do not have a requirement for rapid retrieval, so slower storage devices are appropriate. Archiving records is beneficial that must be maintained but are rarely used. If an archived record is needed, it is acceptable if retrieval is not immediate. Archiving systems are very cheap for record storage. Storage locations can be on-site or in the cloud. Records retention best practices. Label electronically maintained records. Create backup electronic file copies. Retain paper copies of records that cannot be completely transferred to the electronic system. Do not keep records longer than necessary. Make sure records have dates of origin, movement, and use. Remove unnecessary electronic records. Maintain information handling controls over life cycle. Ensure that records remain accessible for the length of the time they are retained. Deduplicate records to avoid unnecessary storage of multiple copies that increase risk and storage costs. Use automated compression utilities and storage tier creation and management. Classify and retain emails that are official records. Ensure that records remain accessible for the required retention period by periodically converting and migrating records from media sources. Securely delete data in accordance with written retention periods and policies. Determine data security controls. Data states. There are three basic states of data: data at rest, data in motion, and data in use. Data at rest. Data at rest is data that is being stored and not used. Data can be at rest on hard drives, backup tapes, cloud backup, or mobile devices. Data in motion. Data in motion: data is moving from one place to another. Data in use. Data in use is data is being accessed or processed by one or more applications. Scoping and tailoring. Scoping is the process of determining which portions of a standard will be employed by an organization. For example, an organization does not employ wireless equipment. Declare the wireless provisions of a standard are out of scope, and therefore do not apply. Tailoring is the process of customizing a standard for an organization. NIST Special Publication 800-53, Security and Privacy Controls for Federal Information Systems and Organizations, describes the tailoring process. Best practices. Identifying and designating common controls in initial security control baselines. Applying scoping considerations to the remaining baseline security controls. Selecting compensating security controls, if needed. Assigning specific values to organization-defined security control parameters, i.e. password complexity policies, via explicit assignment and selection statements. Supplementing baselines with additional security controls and control enhancements, if needed. Providing additional specification information for control implementation, if needed. Standard selection. Standard selection is choose a recognized framework or a combination of parts of recognized frameworks to establish the baseline requirements. Control framework standards are ISO/IEC 27002, COBIT 5, NIST SP 800-53, NIST SP 800-171, and NIST Cybersecurity Framework. ISO/IEC 27002, Code of Practice for Information Security Management. COBIT 5, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technology. NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, Special Publication 800-53, provides a set of security and privacy controls for federal information systems and organizations. NIST SP 800-171 Revision 1, Protecting Controlled Unclassified Information in Non-Federal Systems and Organizations. NIST Cybersecurity Framework, CISSP, Framework for Improving Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity. Data Protection Methods. Data Backup. Data backup is the result of copying or archiving files and folders for the purpose of being able to restore them in case of data loss. Data backups are full backups, incremental backups, differential backups, and journaling. Full backup is a type of backup which backs up all data files without considering that we already have a backup of the data which we are backing up. Incremental backup is a backup of all changes made since the last backup. Differential backup is a backup of all changes made since the last full backup. Journaling. Journal files are created for each update. They record metadata about transaction and created during the backup process. Database mirroring is a copy of the information is kept on two different servers, principal and the mirror. Snapshots is a process of making a virtual copy of a set of files, directories, or volumes as they appeared in a particular point in time. In cloud computing technology, Availability zones are isolated locations within geographic regions of the cloud service provider's data center. Data vaulting is a way to secure data by sending copies of it off-site where it can be protected from theft, hardware failures, and other threats. Magnetic backup tapes are cost-effective, but the retrieval of the data is slower and more complex. External hard drives, network-attached storage, or DVD increase restoration speed. Network-attached storage, NAS, is a dedicated hardware device that connects to a local area network, usually through an Ethernet connection. SAN is a dedicated high-speed network or subnetwork that interconnects and presents shared pools of storage devices to multiple servers. Data deduplication is a process that eliminates redundant copies of data and reduces storage. Disk mirroring is a technique creating a copy of a hard drive on another disk to ensure continuous availability. Common disk mirroring are RAID 0 striping, RAID 1 mirroring, RAID 5 striping with parity, RAID 6 striping with double parity, and RAID 10 combining mirroring and striping. RAID level 0, stripe set, data is divided into blocks, and blocks are written to disks in turn. RAID level 1, mirror, stores two identical copies of data on two hard drives. RAID level 5, stripe with parity, writes data blocks evenly to all the disks, in a pattern similar to RAID 0. However, one additional parity block is written in each row. RAID 6 striping with double parity uses a block pattern similar to RAID 5, but utilizes two different parity functions to derive two different parity blocks per row. RAID 10 combining mirroring and striping uses two identical RAID 0 arrays to hold two identical copies of the content. Read speed of the N drive RAID 10 array is N times faster than that of a single drive. Full disk encryption of mobile device and hard drives protects data at rest. Trusted Platform Module, TPM, is a microcontroller chip integrated into the computer hardware that provides a crypto processor that protects data at rest. Self-encrypting hard drives, SEDs, with built-in encryption features, protects data at rest. File-level encryption to be applied at the individual file level protects data at rest. Some leading security protocols used to protect data in transit. Web access, HTTPS. File transfer, FTPS, SFTP, SCP, Web DAV over HTTPS. Remote shell, SSH2 terminal. Remote desktop, RADMAN, RDP. Wireless connection, WPA2. Link encryption is a method that encrypts and decrypts all traffic at each network routing point, e.g. network switch, or node through which it passes, until arrival at its final destination. Protects data in transit. End-to-end encryption is a method that data is encrypted on the sender's system or device and only the recipient is able to decrypt. Helps to protect data in transit. Data in motion is best protected via standards-based end-to-end encryption, such as IPsec VPN. Establish information and asset handling requirements. Data can exist in many types of media. Data in motion and data in use can be temporarily stored on devices. Combinations of physical, administrative, and technical controls assist in information and assets handling requirements. Information and asset handling procedures are marking, handling, declassification, destruction and storage. Marking and labeling. Marking and labeling is a procedure to place descriptions on the asset that how an organization identifies sensitive information. For example, a marking might read top secret. Handling. Handling is policies and procedures of an organization provide rules for the handling of information at the asset. Declassification. Declassification is the process of documents that used to be classified information will be declassified as soon as it no longer meets the standards of classification. Destruction. Destruction organization must have procedures detailing how to destroy sensitive information. Storage. Organization must have procedures how information must be stored and backed up, and media must be protected. Ensuring confidentiality, integrity, and availability during secure handling of information and asset.